The moment Vanessa Whitmore's trembling hand grabbed his wrist in that hospital hallway, Ryan Keller knew his ordinary life was about to shatter. A woman he'd never met, dressed in a designer coat that probably cost more than his car, was begging him in a desperate whisper to pretend to be her husband. Behind her, a man in an expensive suit was approaching with predatory focus. Ryan had 30 seconds to decide. Walk away from this clearly insane situation, or lie to a complete stranger who looked like she was about to collapse from fear. He chose wrong. Or maybe he chose right. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. If you want to see how a desperate lie between two strangers becomes something neither of them expected, stay until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in St. Catherine's Hospital emergency wing hummed with the kind of persistent drone that made everything feel unreal. Ryan Keller sat in a plastic chair that was simultaneously too hard and somehow sticky, staring at the scuffed linoleum tiles between his boots. His hands were shaking. He'd been trying to stop them for the past 40 minutes, but they wouldn't cooperate. The doctor had said the word biopsy 3 times during their consultation. Ryan had nodded like he understood, like he was the kind of person who could process medical terminology when his entire world was potentially ending. But all he'd really heard was the subtext. You might have cancer. You might leave your daughter alone. Emma was 6 years old, with missing front teeth and a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Hopscotch that went everywhere with her. She'd already lost her mother 3 years ago when a drunk driver ran a red light on a Tuesday afternoon. Ryan had been at work when he got the call. He'd been rotating tires. He remembered that detail with perfect clarity. The smell of rubber, the hydraulic hiss of the lift, the way his phone had buzzed in his back pocket. Now he sat in this hallway, waiting for test results that would determine whether Emma would lose her only remaining parent before she turned 7. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was watching Emma tonight. She's asleep. Don't worry about rushing back. Praying for you. Ryan typed back a quick thanks and shoved the phone in his jacket pocket. He didn't have the energy to tell Mrs. Chen that he wasn't much for prayer these days. Not since Sarah's funeral, when people kept telling him it was part of some larger plan, as if Emma growing up without a mother was somehow cosmically justified. Mr. Keller. Ryan's head snapped up. A nurse stood a few feet away, holding a tablet and looking tired. Her scrubs had cartoon cats on them. Sarah would have liked those scrubs. The doctor can see you now, the nurse said. Follow me. Ryan stood, his knees cracking. He was 32 but felt about 65. 3 years of single parenting while working 50-hour weeks at Mike's Auto Repair would do that to a person. He followed the nurse down the corridor, past rooms where other people were living through their own private catastrophes. The examination room was small and cold. Ryan sat on the paper-covered table, the crinkling sound absurdly loud in the silence. The nurse checked something on her tablet, gave him a professional smile that revealed nothing, and left. He waited. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 7 minutes, 9, 12. Ryan pulled out his phone and looked at his lock screen, a photo of Emma from last weekend at the park. She was upside down on the monkey bars, grinning like gravity was a suggestion rather than a law. He'd taken the picture right before she'd slipped and scraped both knees, then cried for exactly 90 seconds before spotting a dog and forgetting all about her injuries. Kids were resilient like that. Until they weren't. The door opened. Dr. Patel stepped in, looking at a folder. He was in his 50s, with gray at his temples, and the kind of calm demeanor that came from delivering both good and terrible news for decades. Mr. Keller, Dr. Patel said, closing the door. Thank you for waiting. Ryan couldn't speak. His throat had closed up entirely. Dr. Patel sat down on the rolling stool and looked directly at Ryan. I have good news. The relief hit Ryan so hard he actually swayed. He gripped the edge of the examination table. The mass we were concerned about is benign, Dr. Patel continued. It's a lipoma, essentially a fatty tissue growth, completely harmless. We'll want to monitor it, but there's no indication of cancer. Ryan heard the words from a distance. Ryan. Like someone had turned down the volume on the world. No cancer. Emma wouldn't lose him. He wouldn't leave her alone. Mr. Keller, are you all right? Ryan realized he was crying. Silent tears were streaming down his face, and he was doing absolutely nothing to stop them. Yeah, he managed. Yeah, thank you. Doctor. Patel handed him a tissue box. It's a scary process. You're allowed to be relieved. Ryan wiped his face, embarrassed but unable to care much. When can I leave? Bis Bershi Bandeman. We'll need you to sign some discharge paperwork. The nurse will bring it in a few minutes. Dr. Patel stood, extending his hand. Take care of yourself, Mr. Keller, and that daughter of yours. They shook hands, and the doctor left. Ryan sat alone in the examination room, tissue still clutched in his fist, and let himself fully break down for approximately 90 seconds. Then he pulled himself together because that's what you did when you were the only parent your kid had left. By the time the nurse returned with paperwork, Ryan looked relatively normal again, just tired, like everyone else in the hospital at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. He signed everything without reading it, took the copies they gave him, and walked back out into the hallway. The relief was still washing through him in waves. He'd call Mrs. Chen on the way home, let her know everything was fine. Tomorrow he'd take Emma out for pancakes, and not tell her how close he'd come to shattering her entire world. The hallway was mostly empty now. A janitor mopped near the vending machines. An elderly man shuffled past with a walker. And near the elevator bay, a woman in an expensive-looking charcoal coat was standing very still, staring at her phone like it had just delivered catastrophic news. Ryan barely noticed her as he headed toward the elevator. He was too busy mentally planning his exit from this building. Then the woman's head snapped up, her gaze fixing on something behind Ryan. Her face went pale. Not just nervous pale, but genuine fear pale. Ryan turned to look. A man in his 50s was walking down the hallway toward them. Expensive suit, silver cufflinks, the kind of confident stride that came from never being told no. He had his phone to his ear, but his eyes were locked on the woman in the charcoal coat. Ryan pressed the elevator button and waited. Not his business. But then the woman moved. Fast. She closed the distance between them in 3 steps, grabbed Ryan's wrist with surprising strength, and looked directly into his eyes with an expression of pure desperation. "Please," she whispered, "I need you to pretend to be my husband." Ryan stared at her. She was younger than he'd initially thought, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and the kind of bone structure that belonged in magazines. Even terrified, she was striking, but more importantly, she was clearly out of her mind. "What?" Ryan said. "Just for 2 minutes," the woman hissed, her grip tightening on his wrist. "Please, that man cannot know I'm alone." The man in the suit was getting closer, 20 feet away now. 15. Ryan's brain was screaming at him to pull away, say no, get in the elevator, and leave this bizarre situation immediately. But something in the woman's eyes stopped him. Real fear. The kind he'd seen in the mirror 3 years ago when the hospital chaplain had walked into the waiting room to tell him Sarah hadn't made it. "Vanessa!" the man called out, his voice carrying that fake warmth powerful people used when they wanted something. "What a surprise running into you here. Ishwal Borshaw Armnet." The woman, Vanessa, didn't let go of Ryan's wrist. If anything, she moved closer to him. "Philip," she said, and her voice was completely different now, steady, controlled. "I didn't expect to see you." Philip stopped a few feet away, his eyes moving from Vanessa to Ryan and back again. Something calculating flickered across his face. "I was visiting my mother. She had hip surgery this afternoon." His gaze settled on Ryan. "And you are?" This was Ryan's chance to end this insanity, to say, "I have no idea who this woman is," and walk away. Instead, he heard himself say, "Ryan, I'm Vanessa's husband." Vanessa's hand relaxed slightly on his wrist, but she didn't let go. "Ryan came to pick me up," she said smoothly. "Late appointment." Philip's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Husband? That's news to me. I thought you were resolutely single, Vanessa. You've certainly never mentioned a husband at any board meeting." "We keep our personal life private," Vanessa said. There was an edge to her voice now, something sharp beneath the professional veneer. "How modern of you," Philip said. He extended his hand toward Ryan. "Philip Torrance. I'm on the board of Vanessa's company, Whitmore Industries." Ryan shook his hand, feeling completely out of his depth. Whitmore Industries. He'd heard of them. They did something with tech and manufacturing, had buildings downtown with their logo on the side. This woman wasn't just rich, she was rich. "Nice to meet you, Ryan." Ryan said, because what else was there to say? Philip's handshake was exactly as aggressive as Ryan expected. So, where did you two meet? I'm always curious about these origin stories. Vanessa answered before Ryan could fumble through a lie. At a charity event 3 years ago. Very boring story. 3 years? Philip's eyebrows rose. And you've kept it quiet this entire time? Like I said, we value our privacy. The tension in the hallway was thick enough to cut. Ryan had no idea what was happening, but he knew enough to recognize predator and prey when he saw them. Philip was circling, looking for weakness. Vanessa was deflecting. Well, Philip said finally, I'd love to hear more about this mysterious marriage sometime. Perhaps at the next board meeting? He glanced at his watch. Rolex, Ryan noted automatically. I should get back to my mother. Lovely running into you both. He walked past them toward the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. The silence stretched out, excruciating. Ryan could feel Vanessa's pulse racing against his wrist where she still gripped him. The elevator dinged. Philip stepped inside, turned to face them, and smiled. Take care, Vanessa, and congratulations on the marriage. The doors slid shut. So Vanessa immediately dropped Ryan's wrist like it had burned her. She stepped back, putting distance between them, and her professional mask cracked. For a second, she just looked exhausted and scared. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I panicked. Ryan flexed his wrist. She'd been gripping it hard enough to leave marks. What the hell was that? That was me making a terrible decision. Vanessa pressed her palms against her eyes. When I saw Philip, I couldn't. She stopped, took a breath. Thank you for playing along. I know that was insane. Who is he, why? Ryan asked. Ryan, someone who wants to destroy me. Vanessa lowered her hands, and Ryan saw that her eyes were red-rimmed. Had she been crying before he noticed her? He's trying to force me out of my own company. And if he knew I was here alone tonight dealing with... She stopped abruptly. Ryan waited. When she didn't continue, he said, dealing with what? Vanessa looked at him properly for the first time. Really looked at him, taking in his worn jacket, his work boots, the grease still under his fingernails despite his best efforts to scrub them clean. She seemed to be calculating something. I just found out I have cancer, she said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Ryan felt his stomach drop. He'd just been given a reprieve from that exact fear. And here was this stranger, this woman who'd grabbed him in desperation, facing the reality he'd narrowly avoided. I'm sorry, Ryan said, and meant it. Vanessa nodded. Early stage, treatable. But if Philip finds out, if the board finds out, they'll use it against me. They'll say I'm unstable, unfit to lead the company. Her laugh was bitter. Which is probably why Philip is here tonight. Someone must have tipped him off that I was getting medical tests done. That's... Ryan searched for an adequate word. Messed up. That's corporate politics. Vanessa pulled her coat tighter around herself. Look, I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You can forget this whole thing happened. I'll handle Philip. The elevator dinged again. A young couple stepped out, laughing about something, oblivious to the tension in the hallway. They walked past, heading toward the maternity ward. Ryan should leave. Should press the elevator button, go home, hug Emma, and forget this entire bizarre encounter. This woman's problems weren't his problems. He had enough of his own. But he kept thinking about how her hand had shaken when she grabbed his wrist, how Philip had looked at her like she was prey. He believed it, Ryan heard himself say. Vanessa looked up. What? Philip? He believed the husband thing. You saw his face. He was suspicious, but he believed it. So? So maybe that buys you time. Ryan didn't know where the words were coming from. If he thinks you have a husband, maybe he backs off. Maybe it makes you look more stable. Vanessa stared at him like he'd suggested they rob a bank. Are you suggesting we continue this lie? I'm suggesting you just told a powerful enemy that you're married. If you show up at your next board meeting and that turns out to be false, what happens? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. It looks like I panicked and lied, which makes me look weak. Right. So you're proposing what exactly? That we pretend to be married? Ryan shrugged, feeling completely insane. For a few days, until you figure out how to handle Philip and your board. Then we stage a quiet breakup and you move on. That's absurd. Probably. You don't even know me. Yeah. No, Ryan agreed, but I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning, and nobody's going to help you. Vanessa studied him, and Ryan could practically see her mind working through scenarios, calculating risks. This was a woman who made decisions for a living, big ones. Why would you help me? She asked finally. Ryan thought about it. The honest answer was complicated. Something about Sarah's death, about being powerless, about the relief he'd felt 20 minutes ago when Dr. Patel said benign, something about recognizing that same fear in someone else's eyes. I don't know, he said instead. But I just found out I don't have cancer, so I'm feeling charitable. Vanessa's expression shifted. Surprise, then something that might have been the beginning of hope. You were here for test results? Yeah. And they were good? Yeah. They stood there in the hospital hallway, two strangers whose lives had collided in the strangest possible way. The janitor had moved on to mopping a different section of floor. Someone's phone was ringing in one of the rooms. The hospital kept operating, indifferent to the bizarre negotiation happening near the elevators. This is crazy, Vanessa said. Completely. If anyone finds out, they won't. You don't know that. No, Ryan admitted, but I'm guessing you didn't get where you are by playing it safe. Vanessa almost smiled. Almost. You have no idea what you'd be getting into. My world, it's not normal. There are photographers, journalists, people who make it their business to dig into every aspect of my life. I fix cars for a living. I'm not exactly high profile. Thus, you would be, the moment you're seen with me. Vanessa pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, and showed him the screen. It was a Google search for her name. The top result was a Forbes article. Vanessa Whitmore, 30, leads tech giant into new era. Ryan scrolled down. There were dozens of articles. Photos of Vanessa at galas, conferences, charity events. She wasn't just successful, she was famous in her industry. I'm a mechanic from Oakland, Ryan said. I have a 6-year-old daughter and about $300 in my savings account. Your world and mine don't exactly overlap. Vanessa took her phone back. I know, which is why this won't work. Probably not. But you're still offering? Ryan thought about Emma, asleep at Mrs. Chen's house right now, completely unaware of how close she'd come to losing him. He thought about Sarah, who'd spent her last conscious moments trapped in a car wreck, probably terrified. He thought about Vanessa's hand shaking on his wrist. Yeah, he said, I'm still offering. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I would need you to come to a company event tomorrow night. There's a charity gala. Philip will be there, and if I show up without my supposed husband, it's going to raise questions. A gala, black tie, downtown. Very boring speeches about quarterly earnings and corporate responsibility. Vanessa's mouth twisted. Not exactly your scene, I'm guessing. I've never owned a tux. I can arrange one. I have a daughter, Ryan said. I can't just disappear for events. Bring her. There will be other families there. We can arrange childcare. Ryan hesitated. Bringing Emma into this felt like crossing a line. I don't want her confused about what's happening. We'll tell her the truth, that I'm a friend who needs help at a work event. Kids are remarkably good at accepting strange situations if adults are honest with them. That was actually true. Emma had accepted a lot of strange situations over the past 3 years. One event, Ryan said. Then we see if this insanity actually helps you. Vanessa nodded. One event. She pulled a business card from her coat pocket and held it out. My personal number is on the back. Text me your address, and I'll have a car pick you up tomorrow at 6. Ryan took the card. It was heavy stock, embossed lettering, Vanessa Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. He flipped it over. She'd written a phone number in neat handwriting. This is crazy, he said again. You mentioned that. Just making sure we're clear. Crystal clear. Vanessa started to turn away, then stopped. Ryan? Yeah? Thank you for not walking away. Ciao. Before he could respond, she headed down the hallway toward the main entrance, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Ryan watched her go. This mysterious billionaire who'd grabbed his wrist and changed his life in the space of 5 minutes. Then he got in the elevator and went home to his daughter. The apartment was dark when Ryan let himself in. He paid Mrs. Chen, thanked her profusely, and waited until she'd left before walking down the hallway to Emma's room. She was sprawled across her bed in a position that looked physically impossible, Mr. Hopscotch tucked under one arm. Her nightlight, shaped like a crescent moon, cast soft shadows across the walls. Ryan sat on the edge of her bed and just watched her breathe for a minute. This kid, this perfect, ridiculous, troublemaking kid who'd saved his life just by existing. Emma stirred, her eyes opening slightly. "Daddy? Hey, baby, go back to sleep. Are you okay?" Her voice was small and worried, and Ryan felt his chest tighten. "I'm perfect," he said. "Everything's perfect. Promise?" "Promise." Emma smiled sleepily and closed her eyes again. Within seconds, her breathing evened out. Ryan stayed there for another few minutes, then got up carefully and headed to his own room. He pulled out his phone and looked at Vanessa's business card. This was absolutely insane. He was a mechanic. She was a CEO. They had nothing in common except a chance meeting in a hospital hallway. But he'd seen the fear in her eyes, the desperation, and maybe that was enough. He typed out a quick text. "This is Ryan. My address is 2847 Harbor Street, apartment 3B. See you tomorrow." The response came back almost immediately. "Thank you. I won't forget this." Ryan put his phone on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, and stared at the ceiling. In 24 hours, he'd be at a billionaire gala pretending to be married to a woman he'd known for approximately 15 minutes. What could possibly go wrong? The next evening arrived faster than Ryan expected. He'd spent the morning at work, rotating tires and changing oil and trying not to think about the increasingly surreal situation he'd agreed to. Mike, his boss, noticed his distraction around lunchtime. "You sick or something?" Mike asked, wiping his hands on a rag. He was 63 and had owned the shop for 40 years. "You've been staring at that brake pad like it insulted your mother." "Just tired," Ryan said. "Uh-huh." Mike didn't look convinced. "How'd the hospital thing go?" "Good. Benign." Mike's face relaxed. "Thank Christ, you had me worried." He clapped Ryan on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. "Take care of yourself. Emma needs you." "I know." Ryan finished out his shift, picked Emma up from after-school care, and took her home. Mrs. Chen had agreed to watch her again tonight, but first Ryan had to explain the situation in a way that wouldn't completely confuse his 6-year-old. They sat at their small kitchen table with grilled cheese sandwiches and apple slices. Emma was explaining the complex social dynamics of first-grade recess. Apparently someone named Jackson had stolen someone named Mia's jump rope, and there was an ongoing judicial process involving the playground monitor. Ryan waited for a break in the story, then said, "Hey, Em, I need to go to a work thing tonight." Emma looked up from her sandwich. "What kind of work thing?" "A fancy party. For a friend." "Do you have fancy friends?" "Fair question. Not usually, but I met someone who needed help, and she invited me to this event." "A she-friend?" "Yeah." Emma considered this. "Like a girlfriend?" "No," Ryan said quickly. "Not like that. Just someone I'm helping out." "Okay." Emma seemed satisfied with this explanation and returned to her sandwich. Then, after a moment, "Are you wearing your nice shirt?" Ryan looked down at his work shirt, which had his name embroidered on the pocket and several mysterious stains. "I'm going to wear something nicer than this." "Good, because that shirt smells like cars." At 5:30, the doorbell rang. Ryan opened it to find a man in a driver's uniform holding a garment bag. "Mr. Keller, I'm James, Miss Whitmore's driver. She asked me to deliver this." Ryan took the garment bag, feeling awkward. "Thanks. I'll be waiting downstairs when you're ready, sir." "Sir." Nobody had ever called Ryan sir in his life except that one time he got pulled over for a broken taillight. He brought the garment bag into his bedroom and unzipped it. Inside was a tuxedo, actual designer label, perfectly tailored. A note was pinned to the jacket. "Had my assistant guess your measurements. Hope it fits. V." Ryan tried it on. It fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than if it had been wrong. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Emma appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Whoa, too much? You look like James Bond. I feel like an imposter. What's an imposter? Someone pretending to be something they're not. Emma thought about this. But you're going to help your friend, right? Right. Yeet. Then you're not an imposter. You're just wearing fancy clothes. Kid logic. Sometimes it was the clearest logic there was. Mrs. Chen arrived at 10 to 6. Ryan kissed Emma goodbye, promised to tell her all about the fancy party tomorrow, and headed downstairs. The car waiting at the curb wasn't a car. It was a town car, black and gleaming, the kind Ryan usually only saw in movies. James held the door open. "Ready, sir?" "Not even a little bit," Ryan said, but he got in anyway. The drive downtown took 30 minutes. James didn't try to make conversation, which Ryan appreciated. He spent the time looking out the window, watching his familiar city transform into the polished, expensive district where buildings had doormen and restaurants didn't list prices on their menus. They pulled up in front of the Meridian Hotel. A red carpet stretched from the curb to the entrance, and people in evening wear were flowing inside. Photographers lined the sides, cameras flashing. Ryan's stomach dropped. "There are photographers." "Yes, sir. Ms. Whitmore mentioned you might be uncomfortable." She suggested entering through the side entrance. "There's a side entrance?" There's always a side entrance." James drove around the block to a less conspicuous door. A woman in an earpiece and an elegant black suit stood waiting. "Mr. Keller?" She opened the car door. "I'm Rachel, Ms. Whitmore's assistant. If you'll follow me, I'll take you to her." Poupon. Ryan followed Rachel through a service corridor that was significantly less glamorous than the front entrance. They took an elevator up 3 floors, walked down another hallway, and stopped outside a door marked private. Rachel knocked twice, then opened it. Vanessa was standing near the window, looking out at the city. She turned when they entered, and Ryan forgot how to breathe for a second. She was wearing a floor-length black dress that was somehow both elegant and intimidating. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves over her shoulders. She looked like she belonged in this world of wealth and power. She also looked terrified. "Ryan," she said, relief flooding her face. "You came. I said I would." "I know, but I thought you might come to your senses." "Still time for that," Ryan said, which made her smile slightly. Rachel cleared her throat. "I'll give you 2 a moment. Ms. Whitmore, you're expected in the ballroom in 10 minutes. She left, closing the door behind her. Ryan and Vanessa looked at each other. "Nice dress," Ryan said because his brain had apparently stopped functioning. "Nice tux," Vanessa replied. "It fits." "Your assistant is good at guessing." She's good at everything. It's why I pay her an obscene amount of money." Vanessa walked over to a nearby table and picked up a glass of wine, then set it down without drinking. "I need to brief you. Philip will be watching tonight. So will half the board. They're going to ask questions, and we need our story straight." "Okay, we met 3 years ago at a charity auction. Got married 6 months later in a small ceremony, just immediate family. We've kept it quiet because I didn't want my personal life to become a media circus." "Why would I agree to that?" Ryan asked. Vanessa blinked. "What? If I'm your husband, why would I agree to being a secret? Most people want to be acknowledged." That stopped her. "I hadn't thought about that." "You need a better reason. Something that makes me look like I'm not just letting you hide me." Vanessa thought for a moment. "What if we say you insisted on privacy? That you didn't want the attention, and I respected that." "Better. What do I do for a living?" "The truth. You're a mechanic. There's no point in lying about something that can be easily verified." "And Emma? Your daughter from your first marriage. I'm..." Vanessa hesitated. "I'm her stepmother. The word hung between them, strange and intimate. "Okay," Ryan said. "What else?" Vanessa ran through a few more details, where they supposedly lived, her penthouse, though Ryan had never actually been there, what they did on weekends, quiet dinners mostly because Ryan didn't like crowds, how they'd fallen in love slowly, carefully, unexpected. It was all fiction, but Vanessa told it like it was real, like she'd spent time thinking about what their life together would look like. "One more thing," Vanessa said. "Philip is going to try to get you alone, to test you, see if the story holds up. Don't let him. What if I can't avoid it? Then stick to the script. And remember, he's dangerous. He didn't get where he is by playing fair." A knock at the door interrupted them. Rachel's voice came through. "Ms. Whitmore, it's time. Vanessa took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. The vulnerable woman from a moment ago disappeared, replaced by the CEO from the Forbes article. Ready? Ryan thought about Emma, safe at home with Mrs. Chen. About his tiny apartment that didn't have marble floors or chandeliers. About the fact that he was about to walk into a room full of billionaires and pretend to be one of them. Not even close, he said. But let's do it anyway. Vanessa held out her hand. Ryan took it, and together they walked out of the room and into the most elaborate lie either of them had ever told. The ballroom was exactly as overwhelming as Ryan had feared. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling that seemed impossibly high, casting fractured light across marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Round tables draped in white linen filled the space, each one surrounded by people who looked like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. A string quartet played something classical near the far wall, barely audible over the hum of conversation and clinking glasses. Ryan's hand tightened slightly on Vanessa's as they paused in the doorway. She felt it and glanced at him, her expression unreadable behind a practiced smile. "Breathe," she murmured. "You're doing fine. I haven't done anything yet. Exactly. Keep it that way." They stepped into the room and Ryan immediately felt the weight of attention shift toward them. Not everyone. Most people were too absorbed in their own conversations. But enough. A woman in a red dress leaned toward her companion and whispered something. A man in a gray suit stared openly, champagne glass frozen halfway to his mouth. "They're looking," Ryan said under his breath. "Let them." Vanessa's voice was calm, but her grip on his hand suggested otherwise. "We're just another couple at a boring charity event." A waiter appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. Vanessa took one. Ryan hesitated, then did the same, though he had no intention of drinking it. He needed to stay sharp. "Vanessa!" A woman's voice cut through the ambient noise. "There you are!" A blonde woman in her 40s approached, wearing a silver dress and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She air-kissed Vanessa on both cheeks with the kind of precision that suggested years of practice. "Catherine," Vanessa said smoothly, "you look wonderful. Flattery will get you everywhere." "Darling." Catherine's gaze slid to Ryan, assessment sharp in her eyes. "And who is this handsome stranger?" "Catherine Bordeaux. Meet my husband, Ryan Keller." The word husband landed like a stone in still water. Catherine's smile froze for just a fraction of a second before recovering. "Husband? Vanessa, you've been holding out on us." "We prefer to keep our personal life private," Vanessa said, repeating the line they'd rehearsed. "Clearly." Catherine extended a perfectly manicured hand toward Ryan. "Catherine Bordeaux. I'm on the board of Whitmore Industries, and apparently woefully uninformed about our CEO's marriage." Ryan shook her hand, trying to match her firm grip without overdoing it. "Nice to meet you." "And what do you do, Ryan?" Here it was, the first real test. "I'm a mechanic." Catherine's eyebrows rose slightly. How refreshingly blue-collar. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Ryan felt Vanessa tense beside him. "Ryan owns his own shop." Vanessa lied smoothly, which was news to Ryan. He specializes in vintage restorations. That was actually worse. Now he had to remember this fiction. But Catherine seemed satisfied, or at least willing to pretend she was. "How fascinating. You'll have to tell me all about it sometime." She turned back to Vanessa. "Philip is here, by the way. He was asking about you earlier." "I'm sure he was." "He mentioned running into you last night." "At the hospital?" Catherine's tone was carefully neutral, but Ryan caught the fishing expedition underneath. "Routine checkup," Vanessa said. "Nothing dramatic." "Of course." Catherine smiled again. "Well, I won't monopolize you two. Enjoy the evening." She glided away, and Ryan watched her stop at another cluster of well-dressed people. Within seconds, she was leaning in, whispering. "She's going to tell everyone," Ryan said quietly. "I'm counting on it." Vanessa took a sip of her champagne. "By the time we sit down for dinner, half the room will know I'm supposedly married, which means Philip can't claim I made it up on the spot. You're good at this. I've been playing corporate politics since I was 25. You learn fast or you drown." They moved deeper into the ballroom, stopping occasionally when someone intercepted them. Vanessa made introductions: board members, investors, department heads whose names Ryan immediately forgot. Each conversation followed the same pattern: surprise at Ryan's existence, thinly veiled curiosity about how a mechanic had ended up married to Vanessa Whitmore, and carefully worded questions that were really attempts to dig for information. Ryan stuck to the script. They'd met at a charity auction, fell in love slowly, got married quietly. It was all very boring and romantic and completely unverifiable, which was the point. After the fifth introduction, Ryan's face hurt from maintaining a pleasant expression. He wasn't built for this kind of performance. Give him an engine to rebuild, and he could work for hours without breaking a sweat. But this, smiling at strangers who looked at him like he was a zoo exhibit, was exhausting. "You're doing great," Vanessa murmured as they finally found a moment of relative privacy near one of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "I feel like a fraud." "Join the club." Ryan looked at her. "You feel like a fraud? You're the CEO. It doesn't mean I belong here." Vanessa stared out at the skyline, her expression briefly unguarded. "Half these people think I'm too young. The other half think I'm too aggressive. And all of them are waiting for me to fail so they can say they knew it all along." "Then why do it?" "Because my father built this company from nothing, and when he died, he left it to me. And I'm not about to let people like Philip Torrance destroy his legacy just because they think a woman can't run a tech firm." The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. Ryan wanted to say something supportive, but before he could, a familiar voice interrupted. "Vanessa," and the mysterious husband. Philip Torrance appeared beside them, drink in hand, smile predatory. He was wearing a different suit than last night, but the same expression, calculated friendliness masking something colder underneath. "Philip," Vanessa said, her voice cooling several degrees, "I've been hearing fascinating things about you all evening, Ryan." Philip's gaze was direct, challenging. "Apparently you're a man of mystery." "Not really," Ryan said. "Pretty straightforward, actually." "Funny how no one at this event has ever heard of you. I asked around." "That's because we keep our marriage private," Vanessa said sharply, "as I explained last night." "Mom." "So you did." Philip swirled his drink, ice clinking against glass. "Still, it's unusual. Vanessa, you're not exactly known for your secrecy. You're on the cover of magazines. You give keynote speeches. But somehow you managed to get married without a single photograph surfacing? We were careful. Clearly." Philip turned his attention back to Ryan. "So, Ryan, vintage restorations, is it? What's your specialty? Corvettes? Mustangs?" Ryan's mind raced. He didn't specialize in anything because he didn't own a shop, but Philip was watching him like a hawk, waiting for him to stumble. "Pre-war European," Ryan said, pulling from a conversation he'd once had with a customer. "Mostly British and Italian." Philip's eyebrows rose. "Really? That's quite niche. That's the point. And business is good? Good enough. Where's your shop located?" "Oh." Ryan felt the trap closing. If he named a real location, Philip could verify it. If he made something up, same problem. Vanessa stepped in smoothly. "Ryan's been working from private garage space while we look for a permanent location. The Bay Area real estate market is ridiculous right now." "Isn't it, though?" Philip didn't look convinced, but he also didn't push harder. Instead, he glanced at Vanessa. "I heard you were at the hospital last night. Everything all right?" "Fine. Routine checkup." "Glad to hear it. We need you healthy, Vanessa. The company needs you healthy." The emphasis on the word was deliberate, especially with the Apex merger coming up. A lot of pressure on your shoulders. "Nothing I can't handle." "I'm sure." Philip's smile was thin. "Though if you ever need to step back, take time for yourself, I hope you know the board would support you. We'd make sure the company stayed on track." Translation: they were ready to push her out the moment she showed weakness. "That's very kind," Vanessa said, her tone making it clear it was anything but. "But I'm not going anywhere." "Of course not." Philip finished his drink and set the empty glass on a passing waiter's tray. "Enjoy your evening. Ryan, pleasure seeing you again." He walked away, and Ryan felt like he'd just survived round 2 of an interrogation. "He knows something's off," Ryan said quietly. "He suspects. That's different." Vanessa's jaw was tight. "But he can't prove anything. Not yet." "What happens when he tries?" "We deal with it." A chime sounded through the ballroom, and a voice over the speakers announced that dinner would be served shortly. The crowd began moving toward their assigned tables, conversation shifting to logistics and seating arrangements. Vanessa checked her phone. "We're at table 4, with Philip, unfortunately, and several other board members." "Great. It gets better. There's going to be speeches, long, boring speeches about quarterly earnings and charitable contributions. You'll want to fake your own death by the second one." "Looking forward to it." They found their table near the center of the room. Name cards marked each seat. Ryan was between Vanessa and an older woman whose card read Dr. Helen Marks. Philip sat directly across from them, because of course he did. The other seats filled quickly. Catherine Bordeaux appeared, along with 2 men in their 50s who introduced themselves as board members. Everyone smiled. Everyone was polite. Everyone was also clearly curious about Ryan's presence. Dinner was served, some kind of fish with vegetables Ryan didn't recognize, followed by a salad that seemed to be more decoration than food. He ate carefully, hyper-aware of which fork to use, trying not to embarrass himself. Dr. Marks turned out to be a thoracic surgeon and genuinely pleasant to talk to. She asked about Ryan's work without the condescension Catherine had displayed, and seemed genuinely interested when he described the satisfaction of fixing something broken. "I feel the same way about surgery," she said, cutting into her fish with surgical precision. "There's something deeply satisfying about solving a mechanical problem, whether it's an engine or a human body." "Except engines don't bleed," Ryan pointed out. "True, but they also don't thank you when you're finished." Ryan liked her immediately. Across the table, Philip was talking to Vanessa about the Apex merger. His tone casual, but his questions pointed. Ryan caught fragments of the conversation: stock prices, shareholder concerns, timeline issues. Vanessa answered each question with practiced ease, never revealing more than necessary. "You're handling him well," Dr. Marks said quietly, noticing Ryan's attention. "Vanessa?" "Philip. He's trying to find cracks in your story." Ryan looked at her. "You know about that?" "I'm observant, and I've known Vanessa since she was 26 and terrified of her first board meeting." Dr. Marks smiled. "She's come a long way, but she's also never mentioned a husband until today, which tells me something interesting is happening." Ryan didn't know what to say. Dr. Marks seemed to sense his discomfort and patted his hand. "Relax. I'm not going to interrogate you. If Vanessa trusts you enough to bring you here, that's good enough for me." She paused. "Just take care of her. She acts tough, but she's carrying more than anyone should have to." Before Ryan could respond, the speeches started. The MC, some local news personality, took the microphone and began thanking sponsors and donors. Then came the CEO of the charity they were supposedly supporting, followed by a board member giving an update on Whitmore Industries' quarterly performance. 20 minutes in, Ryan understood why Vanessa had warned him. The speeches were aggressively boring, full of corporate jargon and self-congratulation. He caught himself zoning out multiple times, his attention drifting to the chandelier overhead. Then Philip stood to speak, and Ryan's focus snapped back. "Good evening, everyone," Philip began, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. "I want to take a moment to talk about leadership, about what it means to guide a company through challenging times." Ryan felt Vanessa go still beside him. Philip continued, his tone measured and reasonable. "At Whitmore Industries, we're facing a critical juncture. The Apex merger represents our biggest opportunity in a decade, but it also requires steady hands at the helm, leadership that's focused, undistracted, and fully committed." He paused, letting the words settle. Several people at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably. "I have complete faith in our CEO," Philip said, looking directly at Vanessa. "But I also believe in transparency, in ensuring that our leadership team has the support and stability they need to succeed, which is why I'm proposing that the board conduct a comprehensive review of our executive structure before finalizing the merger." Translation: He wanted to investigate whether Vanessa was fit to remain CEO. The room had gone very quiet. People were watching Vanessa, waiting for her reaction. She didn't give them one. Her expression remained neutral, almost bored. But under the table, her hand found Ryan's and squeezed hard enough to hurt. Philip finished his speech with a few platitudes about corporate responsibility and sat down to polite applause. The MC quickly moved on to the next speaker, but the damage was done. Everyone was talking in hushed voices, speculation spreading like wildfire. "He just declared war," Ryan said quietly. "He's been at war," Vanessa corrected. "He just made it public." "What are you going to do?" "Win." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. More speeches, more courses of elaborate food, more conversation that Ryan only half followed. His attention was on Vanessa, watching her maintain perfect composure even as her entire professional world tilted sideways. Finally, mercifully, the event began to wind down. People started leaving, heading toward the exits in clusters. Vanessa stood, smoothing her dress, and Ryan followed her lead. They made it about 20 feet before Catherine intercepted them again. "Vanessa, darling, that was quite the speech Philip gave, wasn't it? You're not concerned about Philip grandstanding?" "Not particularly." Catherine's smile was sharp. "He has support, you know, on the board. More than you might think." "Does he have yours?" The question hung between them, direct and challenging. Catherine's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "I support what's best for the company," she said carefully. "As we all should." "Of course." Catherine's gaze shifted to Ryan. "I hope you're prepared for what's coming. Being married to Vanessa isn't going to be the quiet, private life you're used to, not anymore." Before Ryan could respond, she walked away, leaving the implicit threat hanging in the air. "She knows," Ryan said. "She suspects, like Philip." Vanessa started walking toward the exit, her pace just slightly too fast. "Let's get out of here." They made their way through the thinning crowd, declining several attempts at further conversation. Rachel was waiting near the side entrance with Ryan's coat. "The car's ready whenever you are, Ms. Whitmore." "Thank you, Rachel." James drove them away from the Meridian in silence. Ryan watched the city pass by the window, processing the evening's events. What he'd thought would be a simple favor, showing up, playing the part, going home, had turned into something much more complicated. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said finally. "I shouldn't have dragged you into this. Little late now. I can still fix it. We can stage a breakup. Say it didn't work out. You go back to your life, and I deal with Philip on my own." Ryan thought about that. About going back to his quiet apartment, his simple routines, his uncomplicated existence. It would be easy, safe. But he also thought about the way Philip had looked at Vanessa. Like she was prey. The way Catherine had delivered her veiled threats. The way Vanessa's hand had shaken under the table during Philip's speech. "What's the Apex merger?" Ryan asked instead. Vanessa glanced at him, surprised. "A technology acquisition. My father started the negotiations before he died. If it goes through, Whitmore Industries becomes one of the largest tech manufacturers on the West Coast. And if it doesn't? We stagnate, lose market share, eventually get swallowed by competitors." She paused. "Philip knows this. He's using the merger as leverage. If he can convince the board I'm not stable enough to handle it, they'll remove me and put someone else in charge." "Someone like him." "Exactly." The car pulled up in front of a building Ryan recognized from earlier, Vanessa's penthouse. James opened the door, and Vanessa stepped out, then turned back to Ryan. "Thank you for tonight. I know it was terrible." "It wasn't that bad." "You're a terrible liar." Ryan smiled despite himself. "Yeah, I am." Vanessa hesitated, then said, "The board review Philip mentioned, it's going to happen, which means they're going to investigate everything about my life, including my supposed marriage." "Meaning they're going to investigate me?" "Yes. And when they do, they'll find out you're not who I said you are. You don't own a restoration shop. You're not wealthy. You're just a mechanic from Oakland." "I was going to say a genuinely good person who got caught up in my disaster." Vanessa looked exhausted suddenly, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "So here's what I'm offering. I pay you. A lot. Enough to make this worth your while. You keep playing the part until the merger goes through, Then we quietly separate, and you walk away with enough money to never worry about Emma's future. Ryan stared at her. You're offering to pay me to be your fake husband? Yes. That's insane. I'm aware. And if I say no? Vanessa's expression hardened. Then I fight Philip alone and probably lose. He takes over the company, dismantles everything my father built, and sells it off piece by piece to line his pockets. She paused. But you go back to your normal life, which is what you should do. This isn't your fight. The smart move was obvious. Take the out. Walk away. Protect himself and Emma from whatever chaos was about to unfold. But Ryan kept thinking about something Dr. Marks had said. She's carrying more than anyone should have to. How much time do you need, Ryan asked. What? Until the merger closes. How long? 6 weeks. Maybe 8. And you really think this will help? Me pretending to be your husband? Oh, I think it gives me a fighting chance. Vanessa's voice was quiet. Philip's entire strategy is based on painting me as unstable and alone. If I have a husband, a stable home life, it undercuts his narrative. It's not much, but it might be enough. Ryan thought about Emma, about the questions she'd ask, about Mrs. Chen's inevitable curiosity, about his boss Mike raising his eyebrows when Ryan started disappearing for fancy events. He thought about his tiny apartment and his secondhand furniture and the fact that he'd been one medical scare away from financial ruin. He thought about Vanessa's hand shaking in the hospital hallway. I'm not taking your money, he said finally. Vanessa looked confused. Ryan, but I'll help you for 6 weeks. We do this properly. Convince everyone, including your board, that we're married. Then when the merger's done, we end it quietly and go our separate ways. Boss, why would you do that without payment? Because Ryan stopped, trying to articulate something he didn't fully understand himself. Because nobody should have to fight alone. And because if our situations were reversed, I think you'd help me too. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude, or something else Ryan couldn't quite name. You're either very kind or very stupid. Probably both. She almost smiled. This is going to get complicated. They'll want to see where we live, how we interact. Philip will be watching for any inconsistency. So we make it consistent. Bah, that means you and Emma moving into my penthouse. Actually living together. Ryan hadn't thought that far ahead. The idea of uprooting Emma, even temporarily, made him uneasy. I'll need to talk to her. Explain it in a way she'll understand. Of course. And ground rules. Emma doesn't get hurt by this. If she starts getting confused or upset, we stop immediately. Agreed. They stood there on the sidewalk, negotiating the terms of their bizarre arrangement while James waited patiently by the car. Okay, Ryan said finally. Let's do this. Vanessa extended her hand, formal and businesslike. Ryan shook it, and the deal was made. As James drove him home, Ryan called Mrs. Chen to let her know he was on his way. Then he sat in the back of the town car watching his city slide past and wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. When he got home, Emma was still awake, curled up on the couch with Mr. Hopscotch and watching cartoons with Mrs. Chen. Daddy! She launched herself at him. How was the fancy party, Kim? Interesting, Ryan said, catching her. Really interesting. Mrs. Chen gathered her things and left with a knowing smile that suggested she suspected Ryan's work friend was more than he'd admitted. After Emma was in bed, after the teeth brushing and story reading and 3 requests for water, Ryan sat on his own bed and pulled out his phone. There was a text from Vanessa. Thank you, I mean it. Ryan typed back. You can thank me when this is over and we're both still standing. The response came quickly. Deal. Ryan set his phone aside and stared at his ceiling. The same ceiling he'd stared at 1,000 times before, except nothing was the same anymore. In 6 weeks, this would all be over. He'd help Vanessa save her company, they'd stage a quiet breakup, and his life would return to normal. Simple. Except Ryan had the distinct feeling that nothing about this situation was going to be simple. And as he finally fell asleep that night, he couldn't shake the memory of Vanessa's hand in his at that ballroom table, holding on like he was the only solid thing in her collapsing world. The conversation with Emma happened 3 days later, over breakfast at their kitchen table. Ryan had been rehearsing different versions in his head, trying to find the words that would make this bizarre situation sound normal to a 6-year-old. He still hadn't found them. Emma was working her way through a bowl of cereal, kicking her feet against the chair legs in a rhythm that was probably driving their downstairs neighbor crazy. Mr. Hopscotch sat propped against the sugar bowl, keeping watch. Ryan started, then stopped. Tried again. You know how I went to that fancy party the other night? The one where you looked like James Bond? Yeah, that one. Well, the friend I helped, her name is Vanessa. She needs a little more help. Emma looked up from her cereal, milk dripping from her spoon. What kind of help? She's having some trouble at work. Bad people are trying to take her company away from her, and I said we'd help her for a little while. How can we help? We don't know about companies. No, but we can be her family, pretend family, I mean, just for a few weeks. Emma's forehead wrinkled in confusion. I don't get it. Yet is ban. Ryan tried a different approach. You know how sometimes you play pretend with your friends at school? Like you're a doctor or a superhero? Yeah, this is kind of like that. Vanessa needs us to pretend we're her family, so we're going to stay at her house for a little bit. And when people ask, we'll say, we're all living together. Like a sleepover? Exactly like a sleepover, a really long one. Emma considered this, swirling her spoon through the milk. Why does pretending we're her family help? That was the question, wasn't it? Ryan had asked himself the same thing about 100 times since the gala. Because the bad people at her work think she's all alone. And if she has a family, they can't hurt her as easily. Oh. Emma seemed to accept this explanation with the easy logic of childhood. Is her house nice? I think so. I haven't actually seen it yet. Oh, does she have a TV? Probably. Can Mr. Hopscotch come? Mr. Hopscotch definitely comes. Emma nodded, apparently satisfied. Okay, when do we go? Ryan felt a wave of relief mixed with guilt. She trusted him completely, didn't question his judgment, just accepted that they were about to move into a stranger's penthouse for reasons she didn't fully understand. This weekend, we'll pack up some of your stuff, and Vanessa will send a car to pick us up. A fancy car like last time? Probably. Cool. Emma returned to her cereal, crisis apparently averted. Then, after a moment, Daddy, is Vanessa nice? Ryan thought about the woman who'd grabbed his wrist in the hospital hallway, who'd maintained perfect composure during Philip's attack at the gala, who'd offered to pay him and then accepted his help without payment. Yeah, he said. I think she is. Just scared right now. Why? Because she's sick, and the people at her work are being mean about it. Emma's expression turned serious. That's not fair. No, it's not. We should definitely help her then. And just like that, it was decided. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation that felt surreal. Rachel, Vanessa's assistant, called with logistics, what to pack, what would be provided, how to handle the transition. Vanessa herself called once, briefly, to check if Emma had taken the news okay. She thinks it's a sleepover, Ryan told her. That's probably the healthiest way to think about it. Vanessa's voice sounded tired. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You're a terrible liar, remember? Ryan smiled despite himself. Yeah, still working on that. The board review starts Monday, which means investigators are probably already digging into your background. What are they going to find? That you're exactly who you say you are. A mechanic. A single father. No criminal record, solid employment history, neighbor testimony that you're a decent guy. She paused. The problem is what they won't find. Any evidence that we've been married for 3 years. So we give them evidence. How? Ryan had been thinking about this. Photos. We stage some. Make it look like we've been together for years. Backdate them if we need to. That's actually not a bad idea. I have them occasionally. Vanessa's quiet laugh carried through the phone. I'm starting to believe that. On Friday afternoon, Ryan told Mike he needed to take some time off. Mike, who'd been giving him curious looks all week, finally asked the obvious question. This about that woman from the hospital? Ryan debated lying, then decided against it. Yeah. She the one who sent the fancy car? Yeah? Tuki. Mike wiped his hands on his coveralls and leaned against the workbench, studying Ryan with the kind of direct assessment that came from 40 years of reading people. You getting in over your head? Probably. But you're doing it anyway? Apparently. Mike shook his head. You're a good kid, Ryan. Too good, maybe. Just don't forget you got a daughter depending on you. I won't. All right, then. Mike clapped him on the shoulder. Take the time you need. Job will be here when you get back. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Ryan and Emma packed 2 suitcases, clothes, some of Emma's toys, the essentials they'd need for 6 weeks in someone else's home. It didn't amount to much. 3 years of rebuilding their lives after Sarah's death had taught them to travel light. At 10 o'clock, James pulled up in the town car. Emma was vibrating with excitement, pressing her face against the window to watch him load their bags into the trunk. This is so cool, she whispered. Ryan wasn't sure cool was the word he'd use, but he kept that to himself. The drive downtown took 30 minutes. Emma spent most of it staring out the window, narrating everything they passed. James drove with patient tolerance, occasionally catching Ryan's eye in the rearview mirror with an expression that might have been sympathy. They pulled up in front of a building that made Ryan's apartment complex look like a storage unit. Glass and steel, doorman in a uniform, the kind of place where the monthly maintenance fee probably exceeded Ryan's rent. Here we are, James said, opening the door. Emma bounded out, clutching Mr. Hopscotch. Ryan followed more slowly, trying not to look as intimidated as he felt. The doorman greeted them with professional courtesy. Mr. Keller, welcome. Miss Whitmore is expecting you. They rode the elevator to the top floor. Just one floor, the penthouse. The doors opened directly into the apartment, and Ryan's first thought was that he'd made a terrible mistake. The space was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, artwork on the walls that was probably worth more than his car. Everything was clean lines and neutral colors, sophisticated and expensive and completely impersonal. Vanessa appeared from somewhere deeper in the apartment, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Ryan's weekly paycheck, but at least made her look human. You made it. Your elevator opens into your apartment, Emma said, eyes wide. It does. Vanessa smiled, and it looked almost genuine. You must be Emma. You must be Vanessa. That's me. Vanessa crouched down to Emma's level. I'm really glad you're here. I could use the company. Emma looked at her seriously. My dad says you're sick. Ryan winced, but Vanessa didn't seem bothered. I am, but I'm getting better. That's good. Being sick is scary. It really is. Something passed across Vanessa's face, surprise, maybe, at Emma's directness. Would you like to see your room? I get my own room? Of course. Oh, Vanessa led them down a hallway, past more expensive art and furniture, to a bedroom that was easily twice the size of Emma's room at their apartment. There was a full bed, a desk, built-in bookshelves, and a window seat overlooking the city. Emma's mouth fell open. This is mine? For as long as you're here. Emma ran to the window seat and climbed up, pressing her face against the glass. Daddy, look. You can see everything. Ryan looked at Vanessa. This is too much. It's just been empty space. Might as well use it. She moved back toward the hallway. Your room is across the hall. I figured you'd want to be close. His room was similarly oversized, with a king bed and its own bathroom that featured heated floors and a shower with about 15 different settings. Ryan had never felt more out of place in his life. I know this is weird, Vanessa said from the doorway. That's an understatement, Isha. If it helps, I feel weird too. I haven't had anyone live here since I bought the place 4 years ago. Why not? Vanessa shrugged. Didn't see the point. I'm barely here anyway. I usually sleep in my office. That's depressing. That's dedication. No, it's depressing. Vanessa looked like she wanted to argue, then didn't. Maybe. But it kept the company alive after my father died, so I'm calling it a win. Emma appeared in the doorway, still clutching Mr. Hopscotch. Can we order pizza for lunch? Vanessa blinked. I don't think I've ever ordered pizza to this apartment. Then we definitely should. Emma said it with the kind of logic that was irrefutable. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in Vanessa's massive living room, eating pizza from paper plates because Vanessa's kitchen apparently didn't contain anything as pedestrian as regular dishes. Everything was either fine china or nothing. This is weird, Emma announced through a mouthful of pepperoni. Emma, manners, Ryan said automatically. But it is weird. This apartment is huge and nobody lives here and there's no kid stuff anywhere. She wasn't wrong. Vanessa's home looked like a showroom, beautiful and sterile and completely devoid of personality. I'm not very good at the whole home decorating thing, Vanessa admitted. I hired someone to do it after I moved in, and I just kept what they picked. It looks like a hotel, Emma said. Emma? Ryan warned. No, she's right. Vanessa looked around her own living room like she was seeing it for the first time. It does look like a hotel. We could fix it, Emma offered. Make it look more like a home. How would we do that? Emma thought about it, chewing her pizza. Pictures and plants and stuff on the shelves that isn't just for show. Vanessa glanced at Ryan, something almost playful in her expression. She makes a compelling argument. She usually does. They spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. Emma unpacked her suitcase with enthusiasm, spreading her belongings around her new room until it looked marginally more lived in. Ryan unpacked more slowly, hyper-aware that he was placing his worn clothes in a closet next to Vanessa's designer wardrobe. Around 4 o'clock, Rachel arrived with a photographer. For the evidence, Vanessa explained, we need photos that look like they were taken over the past 3 years. The photographer, a woman named Kim with pink streaks in her hair and the kind of casual competence Ryan appreciated, set up in the living room. Okay, so we're building a relationship timeline here. We need casual stuff, formal stuff, everyday moments, special occasions. She had them change clothes multiple times. Ryan in the tux from the gala, Vanessa in the black dress, posed like they were at a formal event. Then both in casual clothes, sitting on the couch like they were watching TV. Then in the kitchen, Vanessa pretending to cook while Ryan watched. You know I don't actually cook, right? Vanessa muttered. I'm shocked, Ryan said dryly. Emma thought the whole thing was hilarious. She kept photobombing shots, making faces in the background until Kim started including her on purpose. These are actually great, Kim said, reviewing the images on her camera. The kid makes it feel real. They spent 2 hours staging photographs. By the time Kim packed up her equipment, Ryan's face hurt from fake smiling and Vanessa looked exhausted. I'll have these edited and backdated by tomorrow, Kim promised. Social media posts, photo albums, the works. Anyone investigating will find a perfectly normal relationship timeline. After she left, Vanessa collapsed on the couch with the kind of bone-deep tiredness that went beyond physical. I hate this. Ryan sat in the chair across from her. Ryan sat in the... Emma had gone back to her room to play. Which part? Yes, but All of it. The lying, the staging, the fact that I'm dragging you and your daughter into my disaster. We volunteered. That doesn't make it better. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and pink. When do you start treatment? Ryan asked. Vanessa looked surprised. How did you know I'm starting treatment? You said early-stage breast cancer. That usually means surgery or chemo or both. Surgery. Next Friday. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing a business meeting. Lumpectomy followed by radiation. My oncologist says the prognosis is good. Are you scared? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Terrified, but I can't show it. Philip's waiting for any sign of weakness. You're allowed to be scared. Not in my world. That's a lonely world. Vanessa met his eyes. It's the only one I know. Emma wandered back in, dragging a blanket behind her. I'm hungry again. You had pizza 2 hours ago, Ryan said. That was 2 hours ago. Vanessa stood. I probably have... She opened her refrigerator, which contained bottled water, some wilted lettuce, and what might have once been yogurt. Nothing. I have nothing. How do you survive? Emma asked, genuinely curious. Takeout and hotel restaurants. That's sad. It's efficient. It's sad, Emma repeated with conviction. Ryan made a decision. Come on. We're going grocery shopping. Vanessa stared at him. What? If we're living here for 6 weeks, we need actual food. Real food, not just takeout containers. I don't know how to grocery shop. Then you're about to learn. 20 minutes later, they were in a grocery store 3 blocks away. Vanessa looked as out of place as Ryan felt in her penthouse, staring at the produce section like it was a foreign country. Do you even know what half of these are? She asked, picking up something that might have been a turnip. Not really, but Emma likes apples, so we'll start there. They made their way through the store, Ryan picking up staples while Emma added increasingly random items to the cart. Vanessa followed behind, clearly fascinated by the mundane normalcy of it all. When was the last time you did this? Ryan asked. College, maybe? I lived on ramen and energy drinks. She picked up a box of cereal, examining it like an artifact. My assistant usually handles all this, or I just eat at the office. That explains the depressing refrigerator. It's not depressing, it's minimalist. It's depressing. Emma held up a box of cookies shaped like animals. Can we get these? Vanessa looked at Ryan, clearly unsure of the protocol. He nodded, and Emma added them to the cart with a triumphant grin. At checkout, Vanessa pulled out a credit card. The cashier didn't even blink at the name on it, just ran it through and handed over the receipt. They loaded the bags into a taxi. Vanessa had insisted they couldn't walk 3 blocks carrying groceries, which Ryan found both hilarious and sad, and headed back to the penthouse. In the kitchen, Ryan started unpacking while Vanessa watched with apparent fascination. You actually know where things go. Dishes in cabinets, cold stuff in the fridge. It's not complicated. It feels complicated. Emma climbed onto one of the bar stools. You really never cook? Never. What about breakfast? Coffee from the machine. That's not breakfast. It's caffeine. That counts. Ryan shook his head. Tomorrow morning, I'm making actual breakfast. Eggs, toast, the works. I don't think I have pans. We'll find out. He did find pans, eventually, tucked away in a cabinet that looked like it had never been opened. They were pristine, probably came with the apartment, completely unused. That night, Ryan made pasta with jarred sauce because Vanessa's spice cabinet consisted of salt and something that might have been oregano in a previous life. Emma declared it the best dinner ever, which was objectively untrue but appreciated anyway. After dinner, after Emma's bath and bedtime routine in a bathroom larger than their old living room, Ryan found Vanessa on the balcony. She was wrapped in a cashmere shawl, staring out at the city lights. She asleep? Vanessa asked. Out cold, big day. Thank you for this, all of it. Ryan leaned against the railing. You keep thanking me. Because I keep meaning it. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Nobody's cooked in my kitchen before. Not once in 4 years. That's depressing. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. Vanessa smiled, a real one this time. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone more impressed by money, maybe. More interested in what they could get out of this. I'm just a mechanic who's in over his head. Well, you're a mechanic who's helping someone who has no right to ask for help. Ryan thought about Sarah, about the night the police had shown up at the shop to tell him about the accident, about standing in a hospital hallway being told his wife was gone and feeling like his entire world had ended, about the nurses and doctors who'd been kind anyway, who'd helped him call his parents, who'd sat with him while he tried to process the impossible. Everyone deserves help, he said finally. Even billionaire CEOs. Vanessa looked at him for a long moment. You really believe that? Yeah. Even Philip? I didn't say I had to like them. That got another smile. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe below them. Somewhere out there, Philip was probably plotting his next move. The board was probably reviewing investigation reports. The merger was probably advancing or stalling or doing whatever massive corporate deals did. But up here, on this balcony, It was just two people who barely knew each other, trying to navigate an impossible situation with something resembling grace. Monday's going to be hard, Vanessa said. The board review formally begins. They'll want to interview you. I'll tell them what we agreed. We met 3 years ago, fell in love, got married quietly. They're going to ask invasive questions. I'll handle it. Ryan, I said I'll handle it. Vanessa nodded slowly. Okay. She pulled the shawl tighter. I should get some sleep. Surgery's in 6 days, and my oncologist says I need to be rested. Are you scared? Ryan asked again. This time, Vanessa's answer was different. Yes, but less so than I was 3 days ago. Why? She looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. Because I'm not alone anymore. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than they should have been. Ryan didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Vanessa went inside, leaving Ryan on the balcony. He stayed there for another few minutes, watching the city lights blur in the distance, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. Inside, the penthouse was quiet. Emma asleep in her oversized room. Vanessa in her own bedroom at the far end of the hall. Ryan, in between, suddenly responsible for holding together a lie that was becoming more complicated by the hour. His phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Kid doing okay with the change? Ryan typed back. Better than me. The response came quickly. You'll figure it out. You always do. Ryan hoped that was true. Because in 6 days, Vanessa was having surgery. In 3 weeks, the merger would hit its critical phase. And somewhere in between, they had to convince an entire boardroom of skeptical executives that their marriage was real. He went to his room, climbed into a bed that was far too big, and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally dragged him under. The next morning, Ryan woke to the smell of burning. He bolted out of bed and ran to the kitchen to find Vanessa standing over the stove, waving a dish towel at a smoking pan. What are you doing? He asked, attempting breakfast. She looked at the charred remains of what might have been scrambled eggs. It's not going well. Emma appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Is something on fire? Not anymore, Vanessa said. Ryan gently removed the pan from the stove and opened a window. I said I'd make breakfast. I wanted to try. Why? Vanessa looked embarrassed. Because you said you would. And I thought, I thought I should at least attempt to be a functional adult in my own kitchen. Ryan examined the remains of the eggs. How did you manage to burn them this badly? I got distracted by an email. You were cooking and checking email? Multitasking. Yeah. That's not multitasking. That's a fire hazard. Emma climbed onto her stool. Can we have the animal cookies for breakfast? No, Ryan and Vanessa said simultaneously, then looked at each other. We're starting to sound married, Vanessa observed. Terrifying thought. Ryan made actual breakfast. Eggs that weren't charred, toast that wasn't burned, orange juice from the carton they'd bought yesterday. They ate together at the kitchen island, Emma chattering about her plans for the day, Vanessa checking her phone every 30 seconds until Ryan threatened to confiscate it. I have a board meeting tomorrow, she said. They're going to want to see you there. At the actual meeting? In the building, making it clear we're together. She set down her phone. Philip's going to push for details about our relationship. He'll try to trip you up. Just let him try. Vanessa looked worried. He's not going to play fair. I didn't expect him to. The doorbell rang, or rather, the elevator chimed, since the elevator opened directly into the apartment. Rachel appeared, carrying a tablet and looking stressed. Sorry to interrupt your Sunday, but we have a problem. Vanessa stood immediately. What kind of problem? Someone leaked the board review to the press. It's going to be in tomorrow's business section. Vanessa went very still. Which outlet? Financial Chronicle. They're running a piece about leadership instability at Whitmore Industries. Philip. Almost certainly. Rachel pulled up something on her tablet. They're implying you're unfit to run the company. They mention health concerns without specifying what they are. They can't confirm anything, Vanessa said, but her voice had gone tight. HIPAA protects my medical records. They don't need confirmation. They just need to plant doubt. Rachel looked at Ryan. They also mention your marriage. They're calling it sudden and suspicious. Ryan felt his stomach drop. They used my name? Not yet, but they will. Emma, who'd been listening with growing concern, said quietly, Are the bad people winning? The question hung in the air. Vanessa crouched down to Emma's level, and Ryan saw her consciously soften her expression. Not yet, and not if we can help it. But they're being mean. Yes, they are. That's not fair. No, Vanessa agreed. It's not. Emma thought about this, then said with perfect 6-year-old logic, Then we should be meaner back. Despite everything, Vanessa smiled. You know what? That's not bad advice. She stood, her expression hardening into something Ryan had only seen glimpses of. The CEO who'd built a company back from the edge, who'd survived in a world of corporate sharks. Rachel, get me James Teller at the Chronicle. I want to give them an exclusive interview. Are you sure that's wise? No, but it's what we're doing anyway. Vanessa looked at Ryan. How do you feel about going public with this? What does that mean? It means we stop hiding. We give them a story, the real one mostly. We met under unusual circumstances, fell in love against the odds, got married because it felt right. We make it human instead of suspicious. And if they don't believe us, then at least we controlled the narrative. Ryan thought about it, about Emma hearing her name in news articles, about his coworkers seeing him in photographs with a billionaire, about his quiet life becoming decidedly unquiet. But he also thought about Philip's predatory smile, about the way Vanessa's hand had shaken in the hospital, about Emma's question, Are the bad people winning? Okay, he said, let's do it. Vanessa nodded once, decisive. Rachel, set it up for this afternoon, here, in the apartment. I want them to see we have a home, a life together. I'll make the call. After Rachel left, Vanessa turned to Ryan. You can still back out. This is going to get invasive. I'm not backing out. Why not? Ryan thought about his answer. Because Emma's right. They're being mean, and somebody should push back. Something fierce and grateful flashed across Vanessa's face. Thank you. The reporter from the Chronicle arrived at 3 o'clock, a woman in her 40s named Diana Morris, who had sharp eyes and a recorder that she placed carefully on the coffee table. She looked around the apartment with obvious interest, taking in the grocery bags still on the kitchen counter, Emma's toys scattered across the living room floor, the evidence of actual human habitation. So, she said, settling into her chair, tell me about how you two met. Vanessa and Ryan had spent the previous 2 hours rehearsing their story, making sure the details aligned. Now they told it together, trading sentences back and forth with the kind of easy rhythm that came from practice. They'd met at a charity auction. Ryan had been there doing pro bono repair work on vintage cars being auctioned. Vanessa had bid on one. They'd talked, exchanged numbers, started dating slowly, carefully, both of them carrying their own damage. What kind of damage? Diana asked. Ryan answered that one. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Car accident. I wasn't looking for anything serious. And you? Diana turned to Vanessa. I'd just taken over my father's company after his death. I wasn't looking for complications. But you found each other anyway. Eventually, Vanessa said. It took time. Diana asked about the wedding, about why they'd kept it secret, about how they balanced Ryan's working-class background with Vanessa's wealth. Ryan let Vanessa handle most of it, jumping in when the questions turned to Emma or daily logistics. Then Diana shifted gears. There are rumors about your health, Ms. Whitmore. Care to comment? Vanessa didn't flinch. I was recently diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. I'm having surgery next week. Diana's expression shifted, surprise, then something that might have been respect. That's not public knowledge. It is now. Why disclose it? Well, because Philip Torrance and his allies are using my medical privacy against me. They're implying I'm unstable without saying why. Vanessa's voice was steady. So I'm taking away their leverage. Yes, I have cancer. Yes, I'm treating it. No, it doesn't make me unfit to run my company. Some would argue. Some would argue a lot of things. Vanessa leaned forward slightly. But the facts are these. Whitmore Industries stock is up 18% since I took over. We're in the middle of the largest merger in company history. Our employees have better benefits and higher retention rates than any of our competitors. I've done my job, and I've done it well, regardless of my health. Diana was writing furiously. And your marriage, how does that factor in? It doesn't, or it shouldn't. But since people are making it an issue, Vanessa reached over and took Ryan's hand, and he was struck by how natural the gesture felt now. Yes, we got married recently. Yes, it was fast. But when you've both lost people you love, you learn not to waste time. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Diana asked about Emma, about Ryan's work, about how they made their unusual dynamic work. Through it all, Ryan kept thinking about Vanessa's hand in his, warm and steady, and how easy it was becoming to forget they were pretending. After Diana left, promising the article would run tomorrow with a positive angle, Vanessa collapsed on the couch. That was terrifying. You were great, Ryan said. I just disclosed my cancer diagnosis to a reporter. You took control of the story. Or I handed Philip more ammunition. Emma, who'd been remarkably patient during the interview, climbed onto the couch next to Vanessa. You were really brave. Vanessa looked surprised. Thank you. My dad says being brave means being scared, but doing it anyway. Your dad's smart. I know. Vanessa smiled, then winced slightly, her hand going to her chest. Ryan noticed immediately. You okay? Just tired. It's been a long day. You should rest. You've got surgery in less than a week. I have work. That can wait. Vanessa started to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Maybe you're right. She went to her room, leaving Ryan and Emma in the living room. Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. Is she really going to be okay? Yeah, baby. She's going to be fine. Promise? Ryan hesitated. He couldn't promise that. Nobody could. But Emma needed reassurance, and sometimes the truth took a back seat to comfort. I promise we'll do everything we can to help her. That seemed to satisfy Emma. She went back to her toys while Ryan cleaned up from the interview, his mind racing through everything that was about to happen. Tomorrow, the article would run. The board meeting would happen. Philip would make his move, whatever that was going to be. And in 6 days, Vanessa would go into surgery while Ryan waited in another hospital hallway, hoping for better news than he'd gotten the last time he'd sat in one. His phone buzzed, a text from Vanessa. Thank you for today? For all of this. Ryan typed back, We're in this together, remember? The response came after a long pause. I'm starting to believe that. Ryan stared at the message, then set his phone down and went to make dinner in a kitchen that was slowly starting to feel less like a showroom and more like a home. The article hit the Financial Chronicle's website at 6 in the morning. Ryan knew because his phone started buzzing before sunrise. Texts from Mike, from Mrs. Chen, from people he hadn't heard from in years, who'd somehow seen his name attached to Vanessa Whitmore's. He sat at the kitchen island in the pre-dawn darkness, reading Diana Morris's piece on his phone while coffee brewed in Vanessa's complicated machine that had taken him 15 minutes to figure out yesterday. The headline read, Whitmore CEO opens up about cancer diagnosis, secret marriage, and fighting for her company's future. Diana had done exactly what Vanessa hoped. She'd made them human. The article talked about Ryan's background, about losing Sarah, about how he and Vanessa had found each other in the aftermath of their respective losses. It mentioned Emma, described the penthouse as surprisingly lived in for a billionaire's residence, and painted their relationship as genuine rather than suspicious. But it also didn't pull punches about the board review. Diana had gotten quotes from unnamed sources, almost certainly Philip's allies, questioning whether Vanessa's health issues made her unfit to lead through a complex merger. The article presented both sides, which was fair, but Ryan could already see how Philip would spin it. It's not terrible, Vanessa's voice said from behind him. Ryan turned. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair down, looking more vulnerable than he'd seen her. You read it? About 5 times. She poured herself coffee, her hands not quite steady. The cancer disclosure is going to be everywhere by noon. Is that bad? I don't know yet. Vanessa leaned against the counter, staring into her cup. Either it humanizes me and people rally behind me, or it confirms Philip's narrative that I'm too unstable to lead. You're not unstable. Tell that to the board. She took a sip of coffee, then set it down like it tasted wrong. The meeting's at 10. We need to leave by 9:30. I'm coming with you? Rachel thinks it sends the right message. The supportive husband standing by his wife. Vanessa's expression was complicated. But you don't have to. This isn't what you signed up for. Ryan thought about that. She was right. When he'd agreed to this arrangement, he'd imagined a few public appearances, some staged photos, nothing more. He hadn't expected to become part of a very public corporate battle. Hadn't expected his name in newspapers. Hadn't expected any of this to feel real. I'll be there, he said. Vanessa studied him. Why? Because you shouldn't have to walk into that room alone. Something shifted in her expression, gratitude mixed with something else Ryan couldn't quite identify. Thank you. Emma appeared in her pajamas, Mr. Hopscotch dragging behind her. Why is everyone awake so early? Big day, Vanessa said. Important meeting. The one with the bad people? That's the one. Emma climbed onto her stool and accepted the cereal Ryan poured for her. You should tell them they're being mean, and they should stop. If only board meetings worked that way, Vanessa said, but she was smiling slightly. They should. Emma spoke with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never encountered corporate politics. Being mean is wrong. My teacher says so. Your teacher is right. Rachel arrived at 9 with a garment bag for Ryan, another suit, perfectly tailored, because apparently Vanessa's assistant thought of everything. She also brought a folder thick with documents. Talking points, Rachel explained, handing the folder to Vanessa. Legal reviewed everything. If Philip brings up your health, you stick to what you told Diana. Early stage, treatable, not affecting your ability to lead. And if he brings up Ryan, then Ryan's here in person, which answers that question. Rachel glanced at him. They might ask you to wait outside during the actual meeting. Board members only. That's fine, Ryan said. He had no desire to sit through a corporate board meeting anyway. Mrs. Chen arrived at 9:15 to watch Emma. She gave Ryan a long look that suggested she'd read the article and had thoughts, but she kept them to herself. Emma hugged both Ryan and Vanessa goodbye, making Vanessa promise to tell the bad people to stop being mean. The drive to Whitmore Industries headquarters took 20 minutes through morning traffic. James navigated smoothly while Vanessa reviewed documents in the back seat, her jaw tight with concentration. Ryan watched the city pass by and tried not to think about how completely out of his depth he was. The building was glass and steel, 40 stories of corporate ambition with the Whitmore logo prominently displayed. James dropped them at the executive entrance where Rachel was waiting. Press is already gathering out front, she warned. They're going to want statements. Later, Vanessa said, after the meeting. They took a private elevator to the 38th floor. The executive suite was exactly what Ryan expected. Expensive furniture, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Several people were already there, assistants and junior executives, all of whom stared at Ryan with barely concealed curiosity. Vanessa introduced him to a few key people. Names Ryan immediately forgot, faces that blurred together. Everyone was professionally polite, but he could feel the assessment happening. The silent questions about who he was and whether their marriage was real. At 9:55, the board members started arriving. Catherine Bordeaux came first, air-kissing Vanessa with the same fake warmth from the gala. Dr. Helen Marks appeared next, giving Ryan a genuine smile and Vanessa an encouraging squeeze on the shoulder. Then Philip Torrance walked in. He looked exactly as predatory as Ryan remembered. Expensive suit perfectly pressed, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He went straight to Vanessa. Vanessa, quite the article this morning. Diana's a good journalist. She tells the truth. Does she? Philip's gaze slid to Ryan. Ryan, didn't expect to see you here. Vanessa wanted me here. How supportive. Philip's tone made it clear what he thought of that. Though I have to say, this whole situation seems remarkably convenient. Cancer diagnosis, sudden husband appearing from nowhere, right when the board's questioning your fitness to lead. Are you implying something? Vanessa's voice had gone cold. Just noting the timing. Dr. Marks stepped between them smoothly. Philip, unless you're questioning the validity of a medical diagnosis, I suggest you focus on the actual business at hand. Philip smiled. Of course. Just making conversation. He walked away to join another cluster of board members. Vanessa's hands were clenched into fists. Breathe, Ryan said quietly. I want to punch him. I know, but you can't. Unfortunate. At 10 o'clock exactly, Rachel appeared. They're ready for you, Ms. Whitmore. Vanessa turned to Ryan. The meeting usually runs 2 hours. There's a waiting area down the hall, coffee, Wi-Fi, relatively comfortable chairs. I'll be fine. She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached up and straightened his tie, the gesture oddly intimate. Thank you for being here. Go save your company, Petit. Vanessa smiled briefly, then followed the board members into the conference room. The door closed behind them with a decisive click. Ryan found the waiting area Rachel had mentioned. It was exactly as described. Comfortable chairs, decent coffee, large windows overlooking the city. He was the only one there except for an assistant who was frantically typing on her laptop and ignoring him completely. He checked his phone. Text from Mike. Saw the article. You okay? Ryan typed back, define okay. The response came quickly. Fair point. Call if you need anything. Text from Mrs. Chen. Emma's watching cartoons and eating too many cookies. Don't tell her I said that. Ryan smiled and sent back a thumbs up. Then a text from an unknown number. This is Diana Morris from the Chronicle. Would you be willing to do a follow-up interview? Personal perspective on supporting a spouse through illness? Ryan deleted it. One interview was enough. 45 minutes passed. Then an hour. Ryan drank coffee and stared out the window and tried not to think about what was happening behind that closed conference room door. At 11:30, the door opened. Board members started filing out, their expressions ranging from neutral to carefully blank. Catherine caught Ryan's eye and smiled in a way that made his skin crawl. Doctor. Marks gave him a subtle nod that seemed encouraging. Philip was one of the last to leave. He paused when he saw Ryan. Interesting meeting, Philip said. Your wife is quite passionate about her company. She should be. It's hers. For now. Philip's smile was sharp. But passion doesn't replace sound judgment. The board has concerns. Then the board should address those concerns with her, not behind her back. Mam techiram ashiki. Oh, we did. Very directly. Philip straightened his cuffs. Tell me, Ryan, what exactly do you get out of this arrangement? A mechanic married to a billionaire. Must be quite the lifestyle upgrade. Ryan stood, meeting Philip's eyes. I get to help someone who needs it. That's enough. How noble. Philip's tone made it clear he didn't believe a word. But everyone has a price. I wonder what yours is. Considerably higher than what you're offering. Something flickered in Philip's expression. Surprise, maybe, that Ryan had pushed back. We'll see. He walked away, leaving Ryan alone in the waiting area. A few minutes later, Vanessa emerged. She looked exhausted, her professional mask showing cracks. Let's go, she said quietly. They didn't speak in the elevator or in the car. James drove them away from the building while Vanessa stared out the window, her jaw tight. Finally, Ryan asked, How bad? They're calling for a vote of no confidence. Next board meeting 2 weeks from now. If it passes, I'm out as CEO. Ryan felt his stomach drop. Can they do that? They can try. Whether they have the votes is another question. Vanessa's hands were clenched in her lap. Philip's convinced 4 board members to support him. I have 3 solid votes, including Helen. The other 2 are undecided. So it comes down to 2 people. Yes. What would convince them? Vanessa laughed bitterly. A miracle. Or the merger going through without any complications, proving I can handle the pressure. She rubbed her eyes. Surgery's in 3 days. Rubbed her. Philip made it very clear he thinks I should step down temporarily to focus on my health. Very reasonable suggestion. Very concerned for my well-being. He's trying to push you out. He's been trying to push me out since the day my father died and left the company to me instead of the board. Vanessa's voice was raw with frustration. He thinks I'm too young, too female, too everything. And now he has the perfect excuse. My health. They pulled up in front of the penthouse. James opened the door, and they rode the elevator up in silence. Inside, Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen with Emma, apparently teaching her how to make cookies. Emma was covered in flour and beaming. "We're making chocolate chip," she announced. "I can see that," Vanessa said, and Ryan heard her consciously soften her tone, pushing down the stress from the meeting. "Mrs. Chen says you need a cookie jar. Every home needs a cookie jar." She's probably right. Emma ran over and hugged Vanessa, leaving flour handprints on her expensive suit. Vanessa stiffened for just a second, then relaxed into it. "Thank you for the hug. I needed that." "Bad meeting?" "Very bad meeting." "Well, did you tell them they were being mean?" "In professional language, yes." "Good." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer and ran back to the cookies. Mrs. Chen gave Ryan a meaningful look. "Emma told me about Vanessa being sick. I hope everything's going to be okay." "We're working on it," Ryan said. After Mrs. Chen left, after the cookies were done and Emma was thoroughly sugar-crashed on the couch, watching cartoons, Ryan found Vanessa in her home office. She was staring at her computer screen without really seeing it. "You should rest," he said from the doorway. "I have emails. They can wait. The merger can't. If we miss deadlines, Vanessa." Ryan walked into the office. "You have surgery in 3 days. You're allowed to take a breath." "Eat. I don't have time to breathe. Philip's circling, the board's questioning my competency, and if this merger falls apart, everything my father built gets destroyed." Her voice cracked slightly. "So no, I can't rest." Ryan pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "What would your father say if he could see you right now?" Vanessa looked startled by the question. "What? Your father? The one who built this company? What would he say?" She was quiet for a long moment. "He'd tell me to stop working myself to death. He'd say the company doesn't matter if I destroy myself saving it." "But her eyes were bright. "And then he'd tell me to prove Philip wrong by succeeding anyway." Sounds like good advice. He died of a heart attack in his office at 2 in the morning. 63 years old, working on a deal that probably could have waited until morning. Vanessa's laugh was hollow. "So forgive me if I take his work-life balance advice with a grain of salt." Ryan thought about his own father, who'd worked construction for 40 years and retired with a bad back and modest savings, but had never missed one of Ryan's baseball games. Different worlds, different choices. "You're not going to be any good to your company if you collapse before the vote," Ryan said finally. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to close the laptop, you're going to eat dinner, and you're going to get a full night's sleep. Tomorrow, you can go back to fighting Philip." "You're very bossy for a fake husband." "Someone has to be, Takta." Vanessa stared at him, and Ryan couldn't read her expression. Then, slowly, she closed her laptop. "Fine, but I'm ordering dinner. I'm not in the mood to cook." "You're never in the mood to cook." Fair point." They ordered Thai food and ate it in the living room while Emma built elaborate structures with blocks and narrated the entire process. Vanessa asked questions about the block city, genuinely interested, and Emma explained her architectural vision with complete seriousness. "This is the hospital," Emma said, pointing to a tall tower, "where people go when they're sick and the doctors make them better." "That's a good hospital," Vanessa said quietly. "And this is the house where families live, see? It has a big kitchen for making cookies." Ryan watched Vanessa watching Emma, saw something shift in her expression, a longing so raw it was almost painful to witness. He wondered when was the last time Vanessa had let herself want something that wasn't work-related. When was the last time she'd imagined a life that included cookies and block cities and sticky-handed 6-year-olds? After Emma went to bed, Ryan and Vanessa ended up on the balcony again. It was becoming their spot, this small outdoor space where the city stretched out below them like a carpet of lights. "I'm scared," Vanessa said abruptly. "Of the surgery?" "Of all of it. Surgery, the vote, losing the company, losing—" She stopped. "Losing what?" He said. Vanessa looked at him. "This, whatever this is. You and Emma being here, coming home to people instead of an empty apartment. It's only been a week, and I'm already dreading going back to how things were before." Ryan's chest tightened. "The arrangement was 6 weeks." "I know. And then we go back to our separate lives." "I know." Vanessa's voice was barely above a whisper. "I know that's what we agreed. I just didn't expect it to feel like this. That. Ryan didn't know what to say, because he understood exactly what she meant. The past week had been strange and stressful and completely surreal, but it had also been something else, companionable, easy in ways Ryan hadn't expected. Emma adored Vanessa, which shouldn't have been surprising, but somehow was. And Vanessa had started to relax around them, letting her guard down in small increments. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight," Ryan said finally. "Let's just get through surgery, then the vote, then we'll see where we are." Vanessa nodded. "Okay." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Rachel coordinated everything: medical appointments, work handoffs, contingency plans for if Vanessa needed extended recovery time. Dr. Marks called to check in, offering both medical advice and moral support. Even Catherine sent flowers with a card that said, "Wishing you strength," which Ryan assumed was sincere, but Vanessa read as a political calculation. Philip sent nothing, which was somehow more telling. The night before surgery, Vanessa was too anxious to sleep. Ryan found her at 2 a.m. in her office, pretending to work, but really just staring at the screen. "Come on," he said. "I'm busy." "No, you're not." Ryan gently closed her laptop. "You're spiraling." "I don't spiral. Everyone spirals. You're just better at hiding it." He held out his hand. "Come on." Vanessa let him pull her up from the desk. They went to the kitchen, where Ryan made tea neither of them particularly wanted, but which gave his hand something to do. "What if something goes wrong?" Vanessa asked quietly. "The surgery? Your doctor said the prognosis is excellent." "That's not what I mean." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "What if they remove me as CEO while I'm recovering? What if Philip moves the vote up, calls an emergency session when I can't defend myself? But can he do that? Probably not, but he'll try." Vanessa set down her tea untouched. "I keep thinking about my father, about how hard he worked to build this company, about how he trusted me to protect it, and I'm about to lose it because I got sick at exactly the wrong time." "You're not losing anything yet." "But I might. And Philip will dismantle everything. Sell off the parts he doesn't want, gut the employee benefits my father fought for. Turn it into just another corporate acquisition target." Her voice was shaking. 20 years of my father's work, destroyed because his daughter couldn't stay healthy enough to fight. Ryan moved around the island and took her hands. They were ice cold. "Listen to me. Your father left you the company because he believed in you, not because he thought you'd never face challenges, not because he thought you'd be perfect, but because he knew you'd fight for what matters." "How do you know what my father thought?" "Because I'm a father, and if something happened to me, I'd want Emma to know she's strong enough to handle whatever comes. That's what parents do. We believe in our kids, even when they don't believe in themselves." Vanessa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I barely remember the last conversation I had with him. He called from the office, said he'd be home late, told me to handle some merger detail. I was annoyed because it was the third night that week he'd worked late. I didn't even say I loved him back." Her voice broke. "And then he died, and I never got the chance. He knew." You can't know that, ew." "Yes, I can. Because you don't build a company and leave it to someone unless you know they understand what it means. He knew you loved him, and he knew you'd fight for his legacy." A tear slipped down Vanessa's cheek, then another. She wiped them away impatiently. "I don't cry. Everyone cries. I don't. It's weak. It's human." Vanessa let out a shaky breath, and suddenly she was crying for real. The kind of crying that had been building for years, held back by sheer force of will. Ryan pulled her into a hug, and she collapsed against him, her shoulders shaking. They stood there in the kitchen while Vanessa cried herself out. 3 years of grief and stress and fear, finally finding release. Ryan just held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring nonsense comfort the way he did when Emma had nightmares. Eventually, the crying slowed. Vanessa pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeves. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I got your shirt wet." "I have others." She laughed wetly. "You're very calm about emotionally unstable billionaires falling apart in your arms. I've had practice with emotionally unstable 6-year-olds, similar skill set." That got a real laugh. Vanessa looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed but clearer than they'd been in days. Thank you. For this. For everything. You keep saying that. Because I keep meaning it. They stood there in the kitchen, closer than they'd been before, and Ryan felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond their arrangement, beyond the lies they were telling everyone else. I should try to sleep, Vanessa said quietly, but she didn't move. Yeah. Ryan? Yeah. When this is over, when the 6 weeks are up and the merger's done and we're supposed to go back to our separate lives. She stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. What if I don't want you to go? Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs. Vanessa, I know that's not what we agreed. I know you have your own life. And Emma, and this whole situation is insane. She looked down. I needed to say it out loud, before surgery, in case something goes wrong. But Sid, nothing's going to go wrong. You can't promise that. No, but I can be there when you wake up. Vanessa met his eyes. Promise? Promise. She nodded slowly, then stepped back, putting distance between them again. Good night, Ryan. Good night. Ryan watched her walk down the hall to her bedroom, then stood alone in the kitchen trying to process what had just happened. Emma's voice echoed in his head from that first conversation. Is she nice? Yeah, Ryan thought. She was nice. She was also brilliant and fierce and terrified and trying so hard to hold everything together. And somewhere in the past week, Ryan had stopped just playing a part. He was in serious trouble. The morning of surgery arrived too quickly. Emma had stayed up late making a get well card covered in stickers and drawings of flowers. So Vanessa knows we're thinking about her, she'd explained seriously. They left for the hospital at 6, James driving them through pre-dawn streets. Vanessa was quiet, clutching Emma's card like a lifeline. Emma chattered nervously about nothing, filling the silence. St. Catherine's looked different in early morning light. Less intimidating, more tired. They checked in at the surgical wing, and a nurse led Vanessa back to prep. Family can come back for a few minutes, the nurse said. Ryan and Emma followed her through swinging doors into a pre-op area where Vanessa was already changing into a hospital gown. She looked young suddenly, vulnerable in a way her expensive suits never allowed. Emma ran up and hugged her carefully. You're going to be okay. I know. The doctors are going to make you better. That's the plan. And then you're coming home and we're going to make more cookies. Vanessa smiled, her first real smile all morning. That sounds perfect, he sighed. A doctor came in to review the procedure one final time. Ryan half listened, his attention on Vanessa's face, watching her carefully maintain composure. They'd remove the tumor, check the surrounding tissue, probably take about 3 hours. Recovery would be straightforward. She'd be home in 2 days. Routine. Except nothing about this felt routine. Time to head to the OR, a nurse said gently. Emma hugged Vanessa again. See you soon. See you soon, sweetheart. Then it was Ryan's turn. He stepped close, and Vanessa grabbed his hand. Thank you for being here, she whispered. Where else would I be? Living your normal life. Not sitting in a hospital waiting room for someone you barely know. I know you, Ryan said. Maybe not for long, but I know you. Vanessa's eyes were bright. Ryan, about last night, what I said, we'll talk about it later. After you wake up and the surgery's done and you're okay. Promise? Promise, Nate. She squeezed his hand once, hard, then let go. They wheeled her away, and Ryan watched until she disappeared through the surgical wing doors. Emma slipped her hand into his. She's going to be okay. Right, Daddy? Ryan looked down at his daughter's worried face and thought about all the promises he'd made in the past week. Promises to Vanessa, to Emma, to himself. Promises that he wasn't sure he could keep but was going to try anyway. Yeah, baby, he said. She's going to be okay. They found seats in the surgical waiting area. Emma pulled out a coloring book. Ryan pulled out his phone, then put it away because he couldn't focus on anything. 3 hours, the doctor had said. 3 hours of waiting while they removed cancer from Vanessa's body, and Ryan sat in another hospital hallway, hoping for better news than last time. He thought about Vanessa's question from last night. What if I don't want you to go? He thought about his own life, his apartment, his job, his carefully constructed routine designed to keep Emma safe and stable after losing Sarah. He thought about the past week, about coming home to people instead of an empty apartment, about Emma calling Vanessa's name excitedly when she got home from school, about sitting on a balcony drinking coffee while the city woke up below. 3 hours felt like a lifetime. 2 hours and 47 minutes later, a surgeon in blue scrubs appeared. Ryan stood so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. "Mr. Keller, your wife is out of surgery. Everything went exactly as planned." The relief hit Ryan so hard his knees actually weakened. "She's okay?" "She's fine. We removed the tumor with clear margins, no complications. She'll be in recovery for about an hour, then you can see her." "Thank you." Ryan's voice came out rough. "Thank you, Edcombe." The surgeon smiled and left. Emma launched herself at Ryan, and he picked her up, holding her tight. "See?" Emma said. "I told you she'd be okay." "You did. You were right." They waited another hour, Emma getting progressively more restless, until finally a nurse came to get them. She led them through a maze of hallways to a recovery room where Vanessa lay in a hospital bed, pale but awake. "Hey," she said, her voice slightly slurred from anesthesia. "Hey yourself." Ryan pulled up a chair next to the bed. "How do you feel?" "Like someone cut into my chest, but alive." She noticed Emma hovering uncertainly. "Come here, sweetheart." Emma approached carefully and held out her stuffed rabbit. "Mr. Hopscotch helped me feel better when I was sad. Maybe he can help you." Vanessa took the rabbit, and Ryan watched her expression crumple slightly before she got it under control. "Thank you. I'll take very good care of him." "Oh, Emma climbed into the chair next to Ryan, apparently satisfied. "See? You're already getting better." Vanessa smiled, still holding the worn rabbit. Her eyes found Ryan's, and something passed between them. Understanding, gratitude, something deeper that neither of them had words for yet. "You were here," she said softly. "You promised you'd be here when I woke up." I keep my promises." "I'm starting to believe that too." Peace. Recovery was harder than Vanessa expected and easier than Ryan feared. They brought her home 2 days after surgery, and she immediately tried to work from her laptop until Ryan physically removed it from her hands. "Doctor's ordered," he said. 2 weeks of rest." "I don't have 2 weeks. The board vote is in 12 days. "Then you have 12 days to heal so you can fight properly." And Vanessa glared at him, but she was too exhausted to argue. The surgery had taken more out of her than she'd admitted, and the pain medication made her foggy and irritable. She slept most of those first 3 days, waking only to eat the soup Ryan made and accept get-well cards Emma had been mass-producing at an alarming rate. On the 4th day, Vanessa woke up clearer-headed and found Ryan in the kitchen making breakfast. Emma was at school, and the apartment was quiet in a way it rarely was anymore. "You're up," Ryan said, looking up from the stove. "I got tired of sleeping." Vanessa moved carefully to one of the bar stools, favoring her left side. "What are you making?" "Eggs, toast, normal breakfast food that actual humans eat, as opposed to coffee and spite?" "Exactly, dumb." Vanessa accepted the plate he slid across to her. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before she said, "Rachel called yesterday while I was asleep. Philip's been busy." Ryan set down his fork. "How busy?" "He's been meeting with the undecided board members, taking them to expensive dinners, promising them positions if they vote to remove me." Vanessa pushed eggs around her plate without eating them. "And he's been talking to Apex, telling them the merger might not go through because of leadership instability." "Can he do that?" "He just did." Vanessa's jaw was tight. If Apex gets nervous and pulls out, the merger dies. The stock drops. The board panics. And Philip gets everything he wants. So we don't let Apex get nervous. How? Ryan thought about it. You call them directly. Tell them exactly what you told Diana Morris. You have cancer, you're treating it, and it's not affecting your ability to close this deal. They might see that as weakness. Or they might see it as honesty, which is in pretty short supply in your world. Ryan met her eyes. You can't win by playing Philip's game. You're not ruthless enough. Vanessa looked almost offended. I'm plenty ruthless. No, you're determined. That's different. Philip would burn down the entire company if it meant winning. You actually care about the people who work there. And that makes me weak. It makes you human. Ryan stood and started clearing plates, which is exactly what you need to be right now. Not a perfect CEO who never gets sick, just a person who's fighting for something that matters. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Call Rachel. Tell her to set up a meeting with Apex, in person. I want them to see I'm not dying in a hospital bed." "Are you sure you're up for that?" "I have to be." The meeting with Apex happened 3 days later in a conference room at Whitmore Industries. Vanessa insisted on wearing a suit despite Ryan's protest that she was barely a week post-surgery. She was pale and moving carefully, but she was also absolutely determined. Ryan went with her. Vanessa had asked him to, and he understood why. She needed the visual of the supportive husband, proof that she wasn't facing this alone. The Apex executives were two men in their 50s who looked skeptical from the moment they walked in. Philip was there too, because of course he was, sitting at the end of the table with a smile that suggested he already knew how this would play out. Vanessa didn't waste time on pleasantries. "I know Philip's been telling you I'm not capable of closing this merger. I'm here to tell you he's wrong." The older of the two Apex executives, a man named Thomas Chen, leaned back in his chair. "Ms. Whitmore, we're not questioning your capabilities. We're questioning your availability. You just had major surgery. Minor surgery. To remove a small tumor. I'm recovering ahead of schedule. But recovery takes time. And this merger has very specific deadlines, which I'm fully prepared to meet." Vanessa pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "This is the complete timeline for the next 6 weeks. Every milestone, every deliverable, every signature needed to close the deal. You'll note that not a single deadline has been missed, and I've already completed the legal review that was scheduled for next week." Thomas picked up the folder, scanning through it. His expression shifted slightly. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. Philip leaned forward. "With all due respect, Vanessa, completing paperwork from a hospital bed isn't the same as leading a company through a complex acquisition." "See, you're right," Vanessa said calmly, "which is why I've delegated appropriately. My CFO is handling the financial integration. My legal team is managing the regulatory approvals, and I'm overseeing the strategic vision, which is exactly what a CEO should be doing." "But if something goes wrong," the second Apex executive started. "The second Apex. Then I handle it. The same way I've handled every crisis since taking over this company 3 years ago." Vanessa's voice was steady. "Gentlemen, I'm not going to pretend I'm not dealing with a health issue. I am. But I'm also not going to pretend that makes me incapable of doing my job. Those are two separate things." Thomas exchanged a glance with his colleague. "Philip mentioned there were concerns about your stability, given the stress of treatment." Ryan saw red. Before he could stop himself, he was speaking. "With all due respect, that's garbage." Everyone turned to look at him. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. Ryan continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I watched my first wife die of injuries from a car accident. I know what unstable looks like. This isn't it." Vanessa's been working 12-hour days from her laptop while recovering from surgery. She's been on conference calls with her team at midnight. She's been reviewing legal documents that would put me to sleep in 5 minutes. If that's unstable, then you have a very strange definition of the word. Well, the room was silent. Philip's expression had gone cold. "And another thing," Ryan said, because apparently he wasn't done. "I've met Philip exactly 3 times. Each time he's been trying to undermine Vanessa. Not because she's doing a bad job. The company's stock is up. Employee retention is higher than it's been in a decade. And you're sitting here because she built a deal attractive enough to make you fly across the country. Philip's trying to remove her because she won't let him run the company into the ground for short-term profit." "Ryan," Vanessa said quietly, but she was almost smiling. Thomas was studying Ryan with renewed interest. "You're very defensive of your wife. That's generally what husbands do. Even when it might cost them business relationships? I'm a mechanic. I don't have business relationships to lose." Ryan met his gaze. "I'm just telling you what I see. And what I see is someone fighting to save her father's company while people like Philip try to destroy it." "But Philip stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Then leave, Vanessa said calmly. But the Apex executives might want to hear the rest. Philip looked at Thomas, clearly expecting backup. Thomas just gestured to the empty chair. Actually, I'd like to hear what else Mr. Keller has to say. Philip sat back down, his expression murderous. Ryan hadn't planned to say anything else, but now that he'd started, he might as well finish. Look, I don't know anything about corporate mergers or quarterly earnings or whatever else you people talk about in these meetings. But I know Vanessa, and I know she's not going to let this deal fail. Not because of her ego, but because she actually cares about the 1,500 people who work for this company and depend on it staying successful. Touching, Philip said acidly. But sentiment doesn't close billion-dollar deals. No, Thomas said slowly. But commitment does. And I'm hearing a lot of commitment from Ms. Whitmore's side of the table. He looked at Vanessa. Walk me through the next 3 weeks. Exactly what needs to happen to keep us on schedule. Vanessa did, her voice steady and professional, laying out the entire strategy with the kind of detailed knowledge that made it clear she'd been living and breathing this merger for months. The Apex executives asked questions. She answered them. Philip tried to poke holes in her timeline. She shut him down with data. 40 minutes later, Thomas stood and extended his hand to Vanessa. I'm satisfied. We'll proceed as planned. Relief flashed across Vanessa's face before she controlled it. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just close the deal. Thomas nodded to Ryan. And thank your husband. That was quite the character reference. After the Apex executives left, Philip turned to Vanessa. That was a mistake. What was? Bringing him. Philip gestured dismissively at Ryan. This is a business negotiation, not a marriage counseling session. Actually, Vanessa said, standing carefully, it was exactly what I needed. Ryan reminded them that there's a human being behind the quarterly reports. Something you've forgotten? If you ever knew it in the first place. Philip's smile was thin. The board vote is in 9 days. You can have all the character references you want. You still don't have the votes. We'll see. After Philip left, Ryan helped Vanessa back to the car. She was moving even more carefully now, the meeting having taken its toll. You okay? He asked. I'm fine, just tired. She leaned back in the seat, closing her eyes. Thank you for defending me in there. I probably made it worse. You made it better. Thomas was ready to pull out until you reminded him I'm a person, not just a CEO with health problems. She opened her eyes, looking at him. Good. She opened her. You're getting good at this husband thing. Yeah, well, don't let it go to your head. Vanessa smiled, but it faded quickly. 9 days until the vote. Philip's right. I don't have the numbers. Then we change the numbers. How? Ryan thought about it. Who are the undecided board members? What? Martin Hayes and Jennifer Soto. Martin runs a venture capital firm. Jennifer is a former tech executive. Vanessa rubbed her eyes. Philip's been courting them hard. Expensive dinners, promises of influence. What do they actually want? What everyone wants. Power, money, security. No, Ryan said. What do they personally want? Not what Philip's offering, but what would actually matter to them. Vanessa considered. Martin's passionate about innovation. He's always pushing for more R&D investment. And Jennifer, she built her career on employee advocacy. She's big on workplace culture and benefits. So show them that's what you care about too. I already have, multiple times. Yes. Then show them again, not in a boardroom, somewhere real. Ryan was thinking out loud now. Martin wants innovation? Invite him to tour your development labs. Let him see what your engineers are actually working on. Jennifer cares about employees? Take her to visit one of your manufacturing facilities. Let her talk to the people who would actually be affected if Philip takes over. Vanessa stared at him. That's actually not a terrible idea. I have them occasionally, so you keep saying. Over the next week, Vanessa did exactly that. She invited Martin Hayes to visit Whitmore's R&D facility, where enthusiastic engineers showed him projects that wouldn't see commercial release for years, but represented the company's future. Ryan went along, mostly staying quiet, but he watched Martin's skepticism gradually transform into genuine interest. Jennifer Soto got a tour of the main manufacturing plant, where floor supervisors and line workers talked about the benefits package Vanessa had implemented, the safety improvements she'd mandated, the profit-sharing program that Philip had opposed. Jennifer asked pointed questions. The employees gave honest answers. Both visits ended without commitments, but Ryan saw the shift in how Martin and Jennifer looked at Vanessa. Not as a potentially unstable CEO, but as someone who actually understood what the company was and what it could become. 3 days before the vote, Vanessa had a follow-up appointment with her oncologist. The pathology report came back clear. They'd gotten all the cancer. No additional treatment needed beyond radiation therapy starting in 3 weeks. Vanessa cried in the car on the way home, the kind of relief tears that came from surviving something you'd been terrified wouldn't be survivable. Emma made a celebration dinner, which mostly meant she supervised while Ryan cooked and declared everything needed more sprinkles. They ate pasta with an alarming amount of Parmesan cheese and ice cream that Emma had indeed covered in sprinkles. To Vanessa being healthy, Emma declared, raising her juice box. To Vanessa being healthy, Ryan echoed, raising his water glass. Vanessa raised her wine glass, blinking back tears. To family, eat. The word hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. Because they weren't family, not really. They were 2 strangers and a 6-year-old playing pretend for the benefit of a corporate board, except it hadn't felt like pretend in weeks. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ryan and Vanessa ended up on the balcony again. It was becoming their ritual, this quiet time where they could drop the pretense and just be 2 people trying to figure out what they were doing. The vote's in 2 days, Vanessa said, and I still don't know which way it's going to go. You did everything you could. Did I? Maybe Philip's right. Maybe I should have stepped down, focused on recovery, let someone else handle the merger. Do you actually believe that? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. No, but I'm tired of fighting. I know, and I'm scared. Not of losing the company. Well, yes, of losing the company, but also of what happens after. She looked at him. Our agreement was 6 weeks. The vote's in 2 days. Even if I win, the merger closes in 3 weeks, which means our arrangement is almost over. Ryan's chest tightened. They'd been dancing around this conversation for days. Yeah. And then you and Emma go back to your apartment. I go back to my empty penthouse. We stage a quiet breakup, and everything returns to normal. That was the plan. I don't want that anymore. Vanessa said it bluntly, no preamble. I don't want you to leave. I don't want to go back to eating takeout alone in my office. I don't want to wake up without hearing Emma singing in the shower off-key. I want this to be real. Ryan felt like he couldn't breathe. Vanessa, I know it's insane. I know we barely know each other. I know you have your own life and I have mine, and they don't make sense together. She was talking faster now, words tumbling out. But somewhere in this past 5 weeks, this stopped being an arrangement for me. And I need to know if it stopped being an arrangement for you, too. Ryan thought about the past 5 weeks, about teaching Vanessa how to make pancakes and watching her burn 3 batches before getting it right, about Emma climbing into Vanessa's lap during movie night without thinking about it, about coming home to the penthouse and feeling like he was actually coming home, not just staying somewhere temporarily. He thought about Sarah, about the guilt he'd been carrying for 3 years, the feeling that moving on would be betraying her memory. But Sarah had never wanted him to be alone. She'd made him promise, in those horrible final minutes in the hospital, that he'd take care of Emma and himself, that he'd let himself be happy again. It stopped being an arrangement around week 2, Ryan admitted. Maybe earlier. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere between grocery shopping and teaching you how to use your own kitchen, I stopped pretending. Vanessa's eyes were bright. So what do we do? I don't know. Your world and mine, they're not exactly compatible. So we make them compatible. How, Taz? I have no idea. Vanessa laughed, slightly hysterical. I'm a billionaire CEO who doesn't know how to cook. You're a mechanic with a 6-year-old daughter. On paper, this is ridiculous. On paper, everything about the past 5 weeks has been ridiculous. True. Vanessa took a shaky breath. But I want to try anyway, if you do. Ryan thought about Emma's question from the first day. Is she nice? He thought about Vanessa holding Mr. Hopscotch in the recovery room, about her teaching Emma the scientific names for plants they saw in the park, about the way she'd cried in his arms in the kitchen at 2 in the morning. Yeah, he said, I want to try. Vanessa closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was tentative at first, questioning, then deeper as Ryan pulled her closer. She tasted like the wine from dinner and possibility, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. So we're doing this? Vanessa asked. For real? For real. Even though it's completely insane? Especially because it's completely insane. Vanessa laughed and kissed him again. And for the first time in weeks, Ryan felt like maybe they'd actually survived this. The day of the board vote arrived with rain hammering against the windows and a tension in the penthouse that Emma picked up on immediately. Is today the big meeting? She asked over breakfast. Today's the big meeting, Vanessa confirmed. She was wearing one of her power suits, armor for battle, but her hands were shaking slightly as she drank her coffee. Are you going to win? I hope so. You will. Emma said it with absolute certainty. Because you're really smart and you work really hard and the bad people are wrong. Vanessa smiled despite her obvious nerves. I wish the board thought like you. They should. Rachel arrived at 8:30 with last-minute briefing documents. James drove them to Whitmore Industries through rain that felt appropriately dramatic. Ryan sat in the back next to Vanessa, holding her hand, feeling completely useless. You don't have to come in, Vanessa said quietly. This could take hours. I'm coming in. Ryan, I'm coming in. You're not doing this alone. She squeezed his hand gratefully. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, all glass and expensive furniture with a view of the bay that was currently obscured by rain. The board members were already assembled, sitting around an enormous table that looked like it cost more than Ryan's car. Philip was there, of course, sitting at the far end with a confidence that suggested he already knew how this would play out. Catherine was next to him, along with two other board members Ryan recognized from the gala. Dr. Helen Marks gave Vanessa an encouraging nod. Martin Hayes and Jennifer Soto, the undecided votes, sat in the middle, their expressions neutral. Ms. Whitmore, the board chairman said. He was an elderly man named Richard Foster who'd worked with Vanessa's father. Thank you for joining us. I understand you're still recovering from surgery. I'm fine, Richard. Thank you for your concern. Before we begin, I should note that Mr. Keller is welcome to wait in the adjacent conference room. This is a closed board session. I understand. Ryan stood, squeezing Vanessa's shoulder once, and left. The waiting room was smaller, but no less expensive. Ryan sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent, and tried not to think about what was happening behind that closed door. An hour passed, then 2. Ryan checked his phone obsessively, even though he had no messages. He made coffee from the fancy machine in the corner and didn't drink it. He stared out at the rain and tried to imagine what he'd say if Vanessa lost everything. At the 3-hour mark, the boardroom door opened. Board members started filing out, their expressions carefully neutral. Philip emerged, his face tight with barely controlled anger. That seemed like a good sign, but Ryan didn't let himself hope yet. Catherine came out next, saw Ryan, and smiled in a way that might have been genuine. She's quite something, your wife. But that's some... Doctor. Helen Marks followed, giving Ryan a warm smile and a thumbs up that made his heart leap. Finally, Vanessa emerged. She looked exhausted, and her suit jacket was rumpled, and there were stress tears tracked down her face. But she was also smiling. I won, she said simply. Ryan pulled her into a hug, careful of her still healing incision. How many votes? 6-3. Martin and Jennifer both voted to keep me on. Philip tried to call for a recount. Richard shut him down. Vanessa was shaking. It's over. The merger's approved. I keep my position. And Philip's influence just evaporated. What happens to him? Richard suggested he might be happier pursuing other opportunities. Corporate speak for resign, or we'll force you out. Vanessa pulled back, wiping her eyes. I won, Ryan. I actually won. You did, because of you. The Apex meeting, the facility tours, just having you here. showing them I wasn't alone. Her voice cracked. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, until Rachel appeared with a discreet cough. Ms. Whitmore, the press is requesting a statement. Vanessa straightened, wiping her face, CEO mask sliding back into place. Tell them I'll make a brief statement in 10 minutes. After Rachel left, Vanessa turned back to Ryan. Come with me for the press statement. You sure? I'm done hiding. If we're doing this for real, I want everyone to know. The press conference was in the main lobby, cameras and reporters packed in tightly. Vanessa stood at the podium, Ryan slightly behind her, and delivered a brief statement about the board's decision, her confidence in the merger's success, and her gratitude to everyone who'd supported her through a difficult time. Then she did something unexpected. She reached back and took Ryan's hand, pulling him forward. I also want to introduce my husband, Ryan Keller. Many of you have read about him, speculated about our relationship, questioned whether it was real. She looked at Ryan, and her smile was genuine. It's real. He's been my anchor through the hardest weeks of my life, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The reporters shouted questions. Vanessa ignored them all, thanked everyone for coming, and walked out with Ryan's hand still in hers. In the car, she finally let herself fall apart. I can't believe that's over. It's not over yet. You still have a merger to close. That's the easy part. Running a billion-dollar acquisition is the easy part? Compared to fighting Philip while recovering from cancer? Yes. Ryan laughed and Vanessa joined him, slightly hysterical with relief. They drove back to the penthouse through rain that was finally starting to clear. Emma was waiting with Mrs. Chen, who'd been watching the press conference on her phone. Emma launched herself at Vanessa the moment they walked in. You won! I won. I knew you would. I told you the bad people were wrong. You were absolutely right. They celebrated with pizza and the rest of Emma's animal cookies and sparkling cider that Emma insisted made everything more fancy. Mrs. Chen left with a knowing smile and a whispered comment to Ryan about how good it was to see him happy again. After Emma went to bed, exhausted from excitement, Ryan and Vanessa collapsed on the couch together. So what now? Ryan asked. Now I close the merger. Prove to everyone that keeping me was the right decision. Vanessa leaned her head on his shoulder. And we figure out what this actually looks like. Us, I mean. That's going to be complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Deep thoughts from a CEO. I'm very wise. You're very something. Vanessa elbowed him gently, then winced. Ow. Still healing. Idiot. You're idiot, apparently. Ryan kissed the top of her head. Yeah, mine. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of merger negotiations, radiation therapy appointments, and the strange new reality of being in an actual relationship instead of a fake one. They told Emma first, who responded with, I know, and an eye roll that suggested 6-year-olds were more observant than adults gave them credit for. They told Mike next, who shook his head and said Ryan was either very lucky or very stupid, probably both. They told Rachel, who just smiled and said she'd already updated Vanessa's emergency contacts to include Ryan as her actual husband instead of her pretend one. The merger closed on a Thursday afternoon in early June. Vanessa signed the final documents in a conference room full of lawyers and executives and people whose jobs Ryan still didn't fully understand. When it was done, when Whitmore Industries officially became the largest tech manufacturer on the West Coast, Vanessa excused herself and found Ryan in the waiting area. It's done, she said. How do you feel? Terrified, relieved, proud. She sat down next to him. Like I actually did what my father trusted me to do. He'd be proud of you too. I hope so. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about what you said, about him knowing I loved him even though I never got to say it that last time. Yeah? You were right. He knew. Just like Emma knows you love her even when you're tired and frustrated and barely holding it together. She took his hand. Love isn't just the words. It's the showing up every day even when it's hard. Is this about your dad or about us? Both, maybe. Ryan thought about Sarah, about the years he'd spent feeling guilty for surviving, for moving on, for letting himself be happy again. He thought about what she'd want for him and Emma, not a life frozen in grief, but a life actually lived. I loved Sarah, he said quietly. I'm always going to love her, but I love you too. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. Vanessa's eyes were bright. No, no. Love isn't a finite resource. It doesn't run out. Ryan pulled her closer. Which is good, because Emma's already claimed you as her bonus mom, and I don't think she's giving you back. Bonus mom? Her terminology. I'm just the messenger. Vanessa laughed, tears spilling over. I like that. Bonus mom. They sat there in this conference room, ignoring the celebration happening down the hall, and Ryan thought about how strange life was. 5 weeks ago, he'd been a single father barely keeping his head above water. Now he was married, actually married. They'd made it legal 2 weeks ago in a quiet courthouse ceremony, to a woman he'd met in a hospital hallway. It was insane. It was impossible. It was also the best decision he'd ever made. That weekend, they moved Ryan and Emma's belongings from their old apartment to the penthouse. Emma had already claimed her room as permanent, decorated it with her own particular aesthetic of stuffed animals, art projects, and a disturbing number of stickers. Ryan's stuff fit easily into Vanessa's closet, his worn clothes hanging next to her designer suits in a visual metaphor for their entire relationship. This is weird, Emma observed, watching the movers carry in the last box. What is? Vanessa asked. Living here for real instead of pretending. Emma thought about it. But good weird. Good weird? Vanessa agreed. The best kind. They made dinner together that night, actual cooking, with Emma helping and Vanessa only burning one thing, which Ryan considered progress. They ate at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining table because formal dining with a 6-year-old was an exercise in futility. After dinner, after Emma's bath and bedtime story, Ryan found Vanessa on the balcony. Their balcony now, he supposed. Their view of the city, their quiet moment at the end of the day. Thank you, Vanessa said without preamble. For what? For grabbing my hand that night in the hospital. For agreeing to a completely insane arrangement. For staying when you could have left. She turned to face him. For choosing me even when it didn't make sense. It made sense to me. Why? You didn't know me. You had no reason to trust me. Ryan thought about his answer. You reminded me that life's too short to be alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, that sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to control everything and just let yourself be vulnerable. He pulled her close. You reminded me how to live instead of just surviving. I was just trying to save my company, and I was just trying to survive another day without Sarah. But we both ended up with something better than we expected. Vanessa rested her head on his chest, and they stood there watching the city lights blur below them. Somewhere out there, Philip was probably plotting his next move at a different company. Catherine was probably calculating her next political maneuver. The business world kept turning, indifferent to individual stories. But up here, none of that mattered. Up here, it was just two people who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of circumstances, building something real from a foundation of lies. Emma asked me something yesterday, Vanessa said quietly. What? She asked if I was going to stay, like really stay, forever stay. Vanessa's voice was thick, and I realized I want to. Not because of some corporate arrangement or because we're pretending, but because coming home to you two is the best part of my day. Ryan kissed her forehead. Then stay. Just like that? Just like that. They stood there in comfortable silence, and Ryan thought about how much had changed in 5 weeks. How his definition of family had expanded to include a brilliant, workaholic CEO who still couldn't cook without supervision. How Emma had gained a mother figure who taught her about science and business and the importance of fighting for what you believe in. How he'd learned that moving forward didn't mean forgetting the past. It just meant making room for the future. The next morning, Ryan woke to the smell of something burning. Again. He dragged himself out of bed and found Vanessa in the kitchen, waving a towel at a smoking pan while Emma sat at the counter offering helpful commentary. You're supposed to watch it, Emma said seriously. That's why it's called watching. I got distracted. By what? Email. You can't cook and email at the same time. I'm starting to understand that, says. Ryan took the pan away, opened Windows, and started over. Vanessa looked sheepish, but also happy in a way she probably hadn't been in years. "I was trying to surprise you with breakfast," she admitted. "Mission accomplished. I'm very surprised you nearly set off the fire alarm." "I'm improving. You burned water last week." "That was one time," Emma giggled, and Vanessa smiled, and Ryan felt something settle in his chest. Contentment, maybe? Or just the simple pleasure of being home. They ate breakfast together, made plans for the day, argued about whether Emma needed a jacket for the park. Normal family chaos, the kind Ryan hadn't experienced since before Sarah died. Later, at the park, Emma ran ahead to the playground while Ryan and Vanessa sat on a bench watching her climb the monkey bars with fearless enthusiasm. "I have radiation therapy next week," Vanessa said quietly. "They say it's just precautionary, but I'm still nervous." "I'll come with you, Sa." "You don't have to." "I know, but I'm coming anyway." Vanessa leaned against him. "I'm not used to people staying. In my world, everyone's always looking for the next opportunity, the next advantage. Nobody just stays because they want to." "We'll get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." Emma fell off the monkey bars, cried for exactly 30 seconds, spotted a dog, and forgot all about her scraped knee. Vanessa laughed, and Ryan thought about how life had a strange way of working out. He'd met Vanessa in a hospital hallway during the worst moment of both their lives. They'd built a relationship on lies and necessity and desperation. But somewhere along the way, it had become real. Messy and complicated and absolutely real. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning in September, they made it official in the way that actually mattered. Not a courthouse ceremony for corporate appearances, but a small wedding in Vanessa's parents' garden with Emma as flower girl and Dr. Helen Marks as officiant because she was the only board member any of them actually liked. Mike stood as Ryan's best man, still shaking his head at the entire situation. Rachel was Vanessa's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony despite her best efforts. Emma took her flower girl duties very seriously and only tripped once. The vows were simple. Ryan promised to always remove burning pans from Vanessa's hands. Vanessa promised to occasionally let him. Emma added her own vow, to share Mr. Hopscotch if Vanessa needed him, but only sometimes because he was still her rabbit. After the ceremony, after the small reception with about 30 people they actually cared about, after Emma fell asleep in the car on the way home, Ryan and Vanessa ended up on their balcony again. "So," Vanessa said, "we did it." "Did what?" "Made something real out of something fake." "Yeah, we did." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Ryan thought about the past 6 months. The stress, the corporate drama, the photographers camped outside their building, the invasive questions from people who thought they had a right to their story. He thought about radiation therapy appointments and board meetings and learning to navigate 2 completely different worlds. He thought about Emma calling Vanessa Mom for the first time last month and Vanessa crying for 20 minutes afterward. He thought about teaching Vanessa to change a tire and her teaching him about stock options. He thought about Saturday morning pancakes and late-night conversations and the way Vanessa still reached for his hand when she was nervous. "No," he said. "I don't regret any of it. Not even the part where my life is insane? Especially that part." Well, Vanessa smiled and kissed him, and Ryan thought about how love worked in strange ways. How it appeared in hospital hallways and grew in corporate boardrooms and flourished in the spaces between truth and lies. He thought about Sarah, hoping she'd approve of the life he'd built after losing her. He thought about Vanessa's father, hoping he'd be proud of the woman his daughter had become. Mostly, he thought about Emma, asleep in her room surrounded by stuffed animals and stickers, and the security of knowing both her parents would be there when she woke up. They'd started as strangers, became conspirators, turned into something real when neither of them was looking. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely not how either of them had planned their lives. It was also home. And maybe that was the point. Family wasn't about perfection or planning. It was about showing up for each other, even when it was hard. It was about building something together out of broken pieces and desperate moments and the courage to ask for help when you needed it. Ryan had learned that love wasn't about finding someone who fit perfectly into your existing life. It was about finding someone worth reshaping your life for, someone who made the chaos worth it, someone who reminded you that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the only way to actually connect. Vanessa had learned that strength didn't mean doing everything alone, that asking for support wasn't failure, That the biggest risk she'd ever taken wasn't a corporate merger. It was letting someone see her when she was scared and broken and human. Together, they'd learned that family was something you built, not something you were born into. That love was a choice you made every day in 1,000 small ways. That the best things in life happen when you stop trying to control everything and just let yourself fall. They stood on the balcony, watching the city breathe below them, and Ryan thought about how far they'd come from that night in St. Catherine's Hospital. How a desperate lie between strangers had become the truest thing in both their lives. Emma would wake up tomorrow in a home with 2 parents who loved her. Vanessa would go to work at a company she'd fought to keep. Ryan would fix cars and make dinner and navigate the bizarre world of being married to a billionaire. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. It was better. Because sometimes the best stories started with a lie. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, they ended with something that looked a lot like truth.